sort of a different subject, not covering gaming news so much, and just in sort of talk about games as a whole. And we're going to focus on a specific subgenre because we've been playing a lot of CRPGs lately, and it's something that I've noticed. And we all have different subjects to bring in today for today, but one thing I've noticed about CRPGs is what I like to not necessarily call it the death of mechanics, but the stagnation of mechanics in RPGs. And this is something that I've slowly come to realize as we played more RPGs with you on stream. The first thing I think I noticed was when we played Fallout 1. And Fallout 1 uses the GURPS RPG system to basically play the game, which is basically sort of like a percentage system, whether you hit or whether you don't hit. And well, that was, dated and aged. What I found fascinating is as time goes on, these systems don't actually really change. Because even in Baldur's Gate 3, it's more or less kind of just the same game again, with, more polish, but we don't really push the genre forward anymore like we did way back when. It's no longer like, oh, we're going to add this, new feature where we can, morph the terrain and break things. Now it's just like, oh, it's the same thing again, but this time high polys and better sound effects. And I want to know what your guys' thoughts on that. Like, am I the only one who feels that RPGs are just stuck in a rut and have been unable to move for the last few decades?
I felt that nothing's really changed as far as games have progressed. They've tried to add new mechanics, but for the most part, it feels like they're just doing the same thing over and over again. Like you'll see, like they'll add a meter here, or they'll add a fucking extra dice roll there. But most of the time, it doesn't solve anything. It doesn't change how you play. It's just more nonsense
Because all
mini games to add to the combat.
Yeah, because what sort of ends up happening is you get a lot of games in which the combat sort of plays out the same, whether it's in turn-based or whether it's in real time, right? Because we also played Dragon Age, and while Dragon Age is kind of like it's one of the more popular BioWare games. One thing I've noticed is, and it's just the same as KOTOR, the only difference is it's just real time. The combat's not really different. You end up using the pause function just like you do in KOTOR to basically do all your abilities. There's a little bit more with positioning, but at the end of the day, it just kind of feels the same. Like the combat's not actually improving in a positive direction. And we're kind of stuck in a rut in which combat in these games sort of just keeps regurgitating itself. And I get why. These studios have a budget. They have a very strict deadline in which they have to pump these games out. If you look at BioWare's development history, it had like a couple of years to pump out, KOTOR, not very much. Then it had like even like shorter time schedules with the sequel, and it's like all sorts of struggles with just getting time to build on systems, but not actually able to experiment and kind of having to play it safe. And anytime they did experiment, you know, it's very dangerous, right? Jade Empire tried experimenting by turning it into a sort of an action, beat 'em up RPG, and that didn't work out that great. It was a quaint idea, but like it wears thin rather quickly as you play the game. It gets very, very stale very quickly. And you start to see through the veneer of it too, where it's just all about dumping points into one specific skill. This is something that I'm not entirely sure if the industry wants to try pushing forward on, because when it comes to a lot of CRPGs, especially in the West, they're kind of stuck. They either do one of two things, from what I can tell. They either try to basically imitate games like, Fallout 1 or, the old Baldur's Gate games, or they try to go real time, or like Mass Effect, they try to become a shooter, so they become a slightly different genre, but in the end, it's sort of just like they sort of slip and slide because what was it? Within two games, or not two games, within one game, within Mass Effect 1, which had barely any RPG mechanics, but with the next game immediately just dumped almost all of that. And it was just like, okay, here's your straight progression thing. This is your gun, buff your gun, buff your little one spell thing. Good, you're done. Mass Effect 3, even more action focused, less RPG, and more linear, and more linear, becoming just basically an action game with narrative choices, more than an actual RPG. Heck, I don't remember the armor system being even that valuable. It actually drifts in terms of value even further the further you get in. Because in the first game, the armors kind of matter. The second game, they don't really. You don't really need them even on the harder difficulties. And like even on the third game, it's just an action cover game. You see sort of a degradation as these games go on.
For like Mass Effect 1 and 2, there is no negative to actually having heavier armor. It's just a negative to be stuck with light armor, I found.
Yeah, it was like, okay, I'm wearing light armor. What's the benefit? It's like, well,
Nothing.
you die faster.
The only the, the only thing about armor that actually mattered was how much you can actually get. Because for the most part, having lighter armor did nothing for you. It was just like you were just squishier and you died faster.
Yeah, because that's kind of just how it felt. Actually, no, that wasn't how it felt. That is what it was, because we played it. I played that game quite a bit. There's really just no reason to bring light armor. Abaddon asks, why do RPGs need to change so radically? The CRPG, the current system, is good. A CRPG is a medium for good stories with fun gameplay. Well, do they need to change? I think they do. I think we need to actually build on top of these systems. I'm not such of the opinion that being stagnant and stuck in the past is a good thing. Like, okay, we played the same game over and over and over again. I would kind of like something refreshing and new. Now, this isn't as big of a deal for new players, right? New generations coming into the gaming market, and for the first time playing, Baldur's Gate 3, it may not be as offensive to them because, for them, it's their first RPG, right? It's their first swing. But in reality, for those who are veterans, you've played this game before, and you've played it a billion times before.
You played a better version of it before.
You played better versions with better stories. Go ahead.
Yeah. 1 second. As Green Branch is saying, your fan is getting picked up on stream.
Yes,
My fan?
Yes.
Yeah.
I'll turn it off.
And
I thought it was AC, and then we couldn't control that. So
I want to give my 2 cents quick for why we're seeing this stagnation in the RPG mechanics. It's because it's a combination of them slimming down and simplifying a lot of their systems, and we're kind of seeing a kind of standardization of these systems across the industry, as well as these other games stuff have this mechanic, so we need to have it in ours. And they're not really probably not seeing much development because most of the game's development time is used up creating the world and like assets for the game, the world, the story, like creating all these events, and then so the engine, probably core like RPG system, it more or less gets put on the back burner, and then they just have to kind of quickly finish that and then ship it out. Is what I think is probably happening. So the simpler they can make these RPG systems, the less work it's going to take, and if they do try to innovate and make something more complex or neat, that's a huge risk, and that's going to eat most of the development time trying to make a good system.
What are your thoughts on that, Binsky?
I mean, there's a lot going into it. First of all, most RPG systems historically have been based on some tabletop system, like Baldur's Gate 1 and 2 is based on Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. It's a modified version, right? But even further back, like older D&D games, like Mensa Baransan or whatever, those were also based on D&D. I'm pretty sure. Like, I didn't really play those super old ones, but I've looked at them, and I'm pretty sure they're based on those old games as well. And D&D, at its core, in my opinion, is not exactly a role-playing game. It's more like a tabletop war game. And it's just like a small-scale tabletop Warhammer, like Warhammer, kind of. Just small scale. And when you translate that into a video game, it really just turns into just random dice rolls. And when you do that, like, it works in a tabletop setting, because in a tabletop setting you're like creating this story based on what's happening. Like, you're trying to do things and you're trying to succeed, and even if you fail, like, that might still be part of the story and lead somewhere. But in a video game, it just turns into like quick load, quick save, right? But what happens is that when old games have like systems that it doesn't really matter what the systems were, but as long as these games were successful, it creates a formula that everybody just starts to follow. It's kind of like how we, like, even when Final Fantasy XIV came out, and like, it's not even a CRPG, like, it's an MMO, but when A Realm Reborn came out, we still had like stat distributions there, even if they didn't do anything. Like, you just put them in strength or whatnot. But that's just kind of how the industry works. Like, people don't really innovate much, and the larger the companies are and the larger they get, and they are getting very big, the less they innovate. So, like, Rapier is right, that's kind of why. I don't know if it's about like having talents, that like they're lacking game developer talents, or if it's just a risk thing, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because some companies are afraid to take risks.
Yeah, but it's also a factor of because you and I, like, I know you and me are heavily like systems persons. Like, I enjoy a complex RPG system. I like games where you can like hamstring someone, and then another character can take advantage of the fact that this character is hamstring. Maybe because he's hamstring, you can now knock him down, or, you know, stuff like that, where you can plan ahead, and there's a lot of complicated things going on.
Yep, synergetic gameplay.
That's like a pretty large minority of gamers, because most people, they don't need that. Like, most people just need a game that's fun, and fun to people can mean many different things. It can just be, you know, they have enjoyable graphics, the environment is cool, like they like the designs, and even if just the animations feel juicy, you know, and they've got good gore and whatnot, cool sound effects, like, all of this translates to a game feeling fun. And even I think that, even, you know, playing like Diablo 3 or something, playing a character or a class that has more cool animations feels more enjoyable than just playing, you know, Bash Barbarian or something, you know?
Yep, or with the Barbarian.
Yeah. And so it's like a combination of all of that. Like, there are games that try to some degree to do new things. Like Pillars of Eternity, for example. They made an entirely new type of rule set for video games. Like, they kind of translated D&D into a video game setting, and the rules make a lot more sense there for playing it as a video game, because it's a lot less based. You know, it's not about missing and hitting all the time. It's more about, you know, having sustainability and whatnot in combat, and you have knockdowns and per combat abilities and all that. But yeah, I don't know if I made a point, but
no, I think so. Like, it is true. Like, for example, Fallout 1, right? A super old game, and not to give it too much credit. Not to give it too much credit. Not to be too mean to the game, but the game is incredibly simplistic. It's actually kind of boring how the combat system works, because it's so simple. It's a D100 system. You have, you know, your gun, you shoot the dude. It's a percentage system. It's not very in depth, but it was serviceable for the time. In fact, for the time, it was pretty good. But nowadays, as time has gone on, what's funny is you see these games more or less just repeated and regurgitated even to this day, right? And one of those issues is, yes, people are too scared to innovate. People are too scared to build on top of, you know, what they had made, because making a new game, or even making like Baldur's Gate 3, for example, taking risks is kind of pointless when you can just sell on good graphics, good music, and you know, just hope that that's good enough to carry the game. And it works. Most people will like flashy spells because flashy spell looks cool, right? And I used my flashy spell to kill bad guy. That felt fun. It felt cool. He died satisfyingly and exploded in a plume of gore, right? But it's more or less the same as Fallout. You know, it didn't really actually do anything new. There's not a lot to do on terms of synergetic gameplay as you would expect or as you would like. But that's, I think, part of the issue is that these companies are more or less fine with that. It's just safe. It's secure to do it. And the only ones who take risks end up being the indies. Because Wolfsbane points out, because the risk of investors, big companies are relying on indies to innovate. In a way, you're right. When it comes down to it, a lot of these indies that take risks end up being imitated later on. For example, this is not entirely in the CRPG genre, but when it comes to games that innovated on a genre, it would be Factorio in terms of logistic sims, right? And then you saw bigger companies start to follow suit, also trying to imitate it. Now you have RTSs trying to do it too. There's a Kickstarter for an RTS that uses, logistic sim to try to be a strategy game as well. And it's interesting because, the indies have to sadly take the risks, and many of them die on these bloody fields, because most indies don't make it. Most indies will be lucky if they get returns that equal what they invested. And even fewer will be successful to be like, I walked away with a profit. And an even greater minority than that will be your Factorios. Games that blew up, your Valheims, games that succeeded in actually breaking out. And they end up pushing the genre. One way, we've seen this in the past, and this is a great one to reference, is Minecraft. Minecraft reshaped how people view survival crafting games. They had existed before, they had always been around, but not to the same degree and not to the same popularity. It takes an indie to come along to inspire normally great change.
You want to know another example of that, where indies came in and changed everything? Blizzard. When they made Diablo, for example, that is an indie studio changing the face of the market. It's just those old indie developers are no longer indie developers, so they don't necessarily have that freedom anymore. Partially because they're beholden to, shareholders.
Yep.
But also just because the industry has changed a lot, and like a small company, it's just vastly different from a large company in every way.
In terms of its freedom, its liberty, right? Look at Arrowhead in terms of how much liberty it has. One of the downsides of these large AAA companies is that they get bigger. The corporate side takes more and more control. And as it takes more and more control, it strangles the creative side. Now, unrestricted creative aspects to development studios is bad too, in of itself, without restriction. Because that leads to problems like, a famous one I like to cite is Peter Molyneux, who is an unrestricted creative who basically drove Lionhead off a cliff. Lionhead Studios collapsed, and the Fable franchise imploded, and the black and white games were never actually real games, they were just tech demos. That is the other problem, right? When you don't restrict it, when you let them have total control, you get cool ideas, but not good games. And it's a difficult line to walk, but sadly it's something we see with like Larian Studios, or some things we see like Activision doing with Blizzard, right? Where they're strangling the life out of the creative side of the company, and basically being like, no, you're going to do all these corporate things because our things have read that this is the popular thing. This is what, the casual normies want. We're not going to innovate in gameplay. That's too risky, don't want to do that. Rome 2 tried doing that. And other RPGs have tried that as well. They've tried to build on it. They've tried taking risks, but they, walk face first into a wall. Because, part of taking risks is understanding that, you gotta take that leap. You gotta be willing to give faith to the creative side, but you also have to understand what it is you're making. And I think the issue is that a lot of these companies, the reason why these games are just the way they are, is because it's easy to just make what came before. And why try to do anything new? Why try to make better games when we can just regurgitate again and again and again, and that's good enough? It's just sad. It's just very sad. Because at the end of the day, when it comes to RPGs, right? We all want games to improve. Even the people that make them. We want new things. We want new games. And what I see often, more than not just with the CRPG genre, but with many, is that games just kind of become cyclical. Like we get another same game next year with another samey story if we're lucky, right? Most RPGs are, iffy on when it comes to story and execution. Now, we have got another subject for today that Reguline would like to talk about as well. I'll cover my screen while I bring up some of the images. Hold on just but a second.
I wanted to talk about the R in RPG, specifically role-playing. Technically RP, so P. It'd be the R and P. I was very shopping that while Phil was coming home and the dogs were barking. I was like, God damn it! It's like I just fucking talked to him while Kid was bringing things up. I messaged it to Aerith Kiddo.
I know, I'm getting it. Hold on but a moment.
The first game I wanted to talk about was Tyranny, which is very similar to Pillars of Eternity. I think it's actually the same group of people.
It's the same developer, yeah.
Yeah, same developers too.
It's Obsidian.
Yep. So, Tyranny is actually one of my favorite ideas for a CRPG. You're essentially playing as the villain of the story. You are a character called a Fatebinder, and you serve the Dark Overlord, Kairos. Kairos has already won. The entire map belongs to him already. No one knows Kairos. No one has ever actually spoken to Kairos. But you know he exists, and that he has power. And that is enough. Because Kairos will you actually carry an edict from Kairos. And this edict holds such power that it will devastate the entire land if his edict is not followed. That's just the startup. That's just the way that the game tries to hook you in. You're playing the bad guy. You have a timer, essentially, before the game kills, before the story causes the death of every single character you've met so far. Here's where the RP comes into line. As you are a bad guy, you determined a lot of different things before you even start the game. Because it takes place after the conquest of the land of the place you're actually at. It's called the Tiers. And because it's a conquest, you, the Fatebinder, determined which faction actually receives the land. If you look at the spiky-headed guy and the bald man on the screen, those are the two major factions. I think they're called the Disavowed, which is the bald man, and the spiky-headed man is the Chorus. Those two don't really like each other. In fact, they're polar opposites. But you, the player, get to determine who received which part of the land, which adds a bit of replayability to the actual world. I'll get to the point as to why that kind of fails, and why this game is also kind of a bit of a failure. But that's later. So you get to decide how the game's actually going to play out before you even start. That's something new. That's something cool. What isn't cool is that the gameplay is basically just Pillars of Eternity again. It's not very good. The stat system is awful, and and almost everything you want to do in the game is determined by at least one stat, specifically. And nothing's really changed about it. But the roleplay aspect is actually very strong in this game. As not only are you a villain, your companions themselves aren't exactly aligned with you. In fact, I think the biggest selling point to the game itself was that your companions don't like you or like each other, yet they are compelled to work with you. And that's what I find interesting, because it leads into an RP that I don't really see in a lot of different games. You play the role of the villain, and your companions can fulfill the roles that they are allowed to be, not that they're forced to be. They're not checking off a checklist like most games are. As most CRPGs will have at least one character for each race and each faction that's in the game. And I found that to be a very annoying checklisty thing I see a lot when it comes to RPGs. Does anyone want anything?
I mean, I've never played Tyranny beyond like a few minutes of it.
Yeah.
I haven't either. I do agree though that most games do just follow this. Okay, we have to have this character, this character, this character. It makes all of them feel very flat.
Yeah, I played like half of Tyranny, but I don't really remember that much, except that there were some choice-based stuff. And I actually like the stat system that they're using, but...
Well, hello there.
Hello, Fairman, but quite Fairman. So, my problem with the stats with Tyranny was specifically that lore determined most of the things and most knowledge in the game. There wasn't specific types of lore or just how general knowledge, not intelligence for a character. It was just lore. If you're good at magic, you need lore. If you want to do a history check, lore. If you want to craft new spells, lore. It's just that, and that was only it.
Absolutely fair. Yeah.
It's fun when we tie all the mechanics into one thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
So it's the mandatory stat. If you don't have this stat, restart the game. My thing about Tyranny that drew me to the game originally wasn't just the fact that I really liked the color palette of this cover, because this is one of the reasons why I actually bought it originally. It was the idea of being the big bad. But I think for me, like, it just wasn't very captivating as a narrative, so it just didn't really retain the interest. And it doesn't really break the mold as far as RPGs. So when we talked about Stagnation earlier, this is like many of the RPGs that I've sort of just like, I picked up, I bought, and I wanted to play it, and I wanted to like it, but it ended up dropping because it doesn't do anything that actually any other RPG does that makes it unique, other than the premise. The premise is cool. The premise I love. You are there's a big bad guy. The world is lost. This is the last like nation or whatever putting up the last resistance, and you are like not a lieutenant of the big bad, but you're like a little bad guy minion.
You're an agent.
Yep, and it's how you can influence this place. And you aren't a good person. The people around you aren't good, and that sounds really, really, really fucking cool on paper. Except when you actually play the game and the characters aren't compelling, and nobody's really noteworthy or memorable in the slightest. The only one in this game who I recognized and know is the guy on the far left, because he's Kairos. And Kairos
that's not Kairos.
That's not Kairos?
That's his judge.
That's the judge? You never see Kairos, don't you?
Yes, you never meet. Or
you never meet him. Okay, yeah. That's the judge.
That's the best part of Kairos.
The judge is yeah. My brain's coming back. The judge is the left-hand man of Kairos. He is like the big cheese is like second, his right hand. But the big thing I remember is like the reason why I remember Kairos, maybe not his character, fucking Christ, but I remember him was because he is so important to the story because he is the big bad guy. And that was cool because in a lot of RPG stories, we always see the big bad, right? You know, in Baldur's Gate 3, we see the big bad at the end of it. You know, it's the ball dude. Oh, spooky. Oh. And it kind of demystifies the setting. What was kind of cool about Tyranny is it sort of had a mystified sense of itself. But the issue is it just didn't have a very good, compelling writing.
Yes,
I'm pretty sure they never revealed the gender of Kairos because some refer to them as he.
They don't. They never reveal it. They never talk about it because it's not important. Because Kairos is Kairos.
Yep.
So, the actual the companions in the game aren't amazing. They're kind of just okay. What I actually liked about the system regarding the companions, however, was that they had multiple ways at which they view the player. They can either respect the player, or fear them, or a mixture of both. And that's the thing I notice a lot about most RPGs. It's just most companions, when it comes to a CRPG, are a binary. Do they like you? Do they hate you? More often than not, it's they love you, they adore you, you're their favorite fucking person on the planet because you're the Mary Sue. But in this game specifically, your companions can fucking despise you, and it's wonderful. I love it. The banter between that is great. And your companions themselves will actually bitch at each other constantly because no one likes each other in the party. It's wonderful. It's the best part about the game.
Doesn't the
However,
game
one second. Go ahead, Fairman.
doesn't the game have that one thing at the end where it kind of forces you to go against
Yes,
Tyranny?
I was getting that. So this game isn't finished. That's its big problem. It's not finished.
That's why I stopped playing it.
There were supposed to be two options for the ending, really speaking. Either abide by Kairos or attempt to usurp Kairos, which would lead on into another game, I suppose. But it doesn't.
Yep, because Tyranny, if I remember right, failed as a game.
Yes, it's half baked and not finished, but it had a lot of good ideas that I wanted to be fleshed out. Because I like the idea of your companion seeing you in multiple lights, not just I love the player character or I hate the player character.
Yeah, that's always the issue with the, what do you call it, the freeform character. The freeform character is always the worst, in my opinion, but it's not always that way, right? Because when you play certain RPGs, and you have a pre-script character who already has a history and a relationship in the world, it's easier to work with. One of the issues with the blank slate character design is that it often makes weaker stories in general. And that's why often, when it comes to, like, you know, Fallout story, like Fallout, the actual Wanderer, he's not interesting. He's kind of boring. What was interesting is everything that happened around him and all the characters around him, right? And that's a self-insert character. One of the issues with storytelling is when you use self-insert characters, you're not going to have as compelling or as potent a story. It's just naturally going to be that way. Because the story is already a scripted story and you're using a non-scripted character who is kind of a blank slate. That's why you can go from saying, like, I love cats, and then punch a child in the next dialogue, because your character, it has three extremes: super good extreme, neutral, and super bad extreme, usually. Which is like jarring things.
For Tyranny, it's mostly lawful evil, chaotic evil, or I'm just doing my fucking job. So like it has all the same problems as every other CRPG. It's unfinished. It doesn't have a lot of good mechanics. It's a lot of the stats are tied to one thing. But it had a lot of promise that it never got to fulfill. Is what I wanted to bring up about it.
That's like a history with Obsidian. They never finish anything.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would say a lot of problems with RPGs actually stemming from D&D, their alignment system that everyone goes to for everything. And it makes for, well, very bland characters because, they're lawful evil, so they always have to be this way.
Yeah, one-dimensional. That's the issue with the D&D lawful system. I have never liked it. I know some people swear up and down by it, but I don't like it because morality is actually much more complex than what you view as a vice and a virtue, especially in society and culture, right? Like, what we view as normal or right might not be the same as, you know, the little country right next door, which might view something completely differently. And that's something that a lot of games default on. You'll see that with BioWare, you'll see that with Star Wars games, where they default to the standard good and evil trope. And it works, and it's also a good PR stunt, too, because think about it. Like, it looked great in the PC Gamer Mag for talking about KOTOR, I remember that much. Where it's like, you know, you got the Jedi's using, like, holy powers, and by holy powers I mean good powers, And then you got the evil, corrupted Sith guy that you could be because you're evil and twisted. And that was a great selling point. But as we grow older, I think some of us start to want more nuanced villains and nuanced stories so that it's not just like, you know, cartoonishly evil. One great villain from a bad RPG game, which is Mass Effect. But one of my favorite villains of all time is the Elusive Man in Mass Effect 2. Because he is a bad guy, but he's also not a bad guy who's wrong either.
He's a bad guy, but he's not evil.
He's not evil. Yes, what he's doing is objectable in some lights, but he has a reason for what he's doing, and he doesn't view himself as cartoonishly evil either. And you can see merit to what he has to say and the merit to his points. Then they ruin his character in the third game by just turning him, no, he was wrong, he's cartoonishly evil, and everything he said was completely wrong. And that's what I think a lot of writers fuck up in. Because they're like, oh, we wrote a really compelling character. Oh, well, that's not good. We don't want the bad guy to look good. He's super evil, he was wrong, and nothing he did worked, and he was going to die anyways. It's like, okay.
I think this might be also partially due to them overestimating impact. Let's just stay with Mass Effect. Let's say, you know that killing the Arachne Queen, or not killing her in the first one, ultimately doesn't make a difference. Because, oh, you're gonna fight the Arachne in the third one anyway. No matter what you do.
Oh, see...
And that is because with a lot of these things, okay, we have this choice. How does this work on the plot? Oh. So theoretically, in a good game that executes, okay, you kill the Arachne, that is one entire enemy. You do not have to fight in 3. Let's say you kill all Batarians, another enemy goes back. But then the game gets easy. Yes, then so what? Then that would require, okay, if they don't have access to this, which they need for story reasons, you can only do this because of that. We need to branch the story from here. So theoretically, if you take care of all of the chances properly, you could theoretically get a Mass Effect 3. Oh, the Reapers are coming, yeah? And yeah, we killed them at the gate. They were really weak. Hypothetical. Because they don't have anything. Yeah, okay. Not very interesting. And a lot of them just don't oversee this because they don't plan that far ahead. That's what I think, at least, is a lot of that stuff.
The big problem with some stories is when you're planning out a series, right, like Baldur's Gate 1, 2, or 3, or when you're planning out Mass Effect 1, 2, or 3, you need a roadmap in advance. And a lot of these companies, the writers, have a general idea of that roadmap, but the issue is because of the corporate culture, and now we're going to go back to ripping on AAAs again, so easy. But the reality is because writers come and go out of studios, or people shift from studio to studio, right? They're not always there to see it through to the end. And somebody comes in and looks at the plot and, like, they're reading the script for the Mass Effect storyline, like, the Reapers aren't actually evil, they're actually fighting Void, and they're actually a necessary evil. And they're like, well, I don't know how to write that. They throw that in the dumpster. Reapers are a result of a error in logic. Period. Done.
So compelling.
Because Mass Effect 2 sets up the Reapers to be a necessary evil to save the universe from its heat death, but in reality it's like the next writer who came or works on it, or maybe it's a change in focus because they didn't commit to the idea, or like, no, maybe we don't want to do that because I don't really know how to execute that. We need to change the story. And that's the issue. You need to foreplan things, and foreplanning things is hard because it means you need to plan out a story in advance. Tyranny probably had some plans of itself, right? Because it set up what would happen if you resisted. Maybe that would be the next game, and it would factor in your choices. This also brings the question, because that is expensive to plan for, right? Is it worth... Would you rather have a more linear story with decisions that have more impact, or would you rather have a game where you have a lot of decisions with very little impact, but, you have a lot of decisions? And that's where you got to ask yourself. Because when I ask myself that same question, I think, and this is definitely a preferential, one that you got to pick for yourself. But I'd rather take either no options or like a handful of options that mattered versus a billion options that had zero impact any day. But that's just me.
Incidentally, this is why you should always try to stay away from any and every level of potential time travel, because that just makes writing borderline impossible to complete properly.
No, that's just...
I disagree on that.
It's going to be a subjective thing, but the problem is time travel is a universal crux.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Even for
I'm
stories
not saying
crafted
you
with
can't
it.
write interesting time travel stories, but
Yeah, there are lots of great ones, even
yeah,
movies.
and or if you look at something like Terminator, okay, why doesn't he just send multiple? Okay, he can't. Okay, fine, but it's also it is not the scale. And the moment you start to try explain this, it always turns a lot into problems. And I may gonna get crucified for this, but there's this one thing they did in Doctor Who with the time travel, where they just went, "Oh yeah, human. I could try to explain. A human can comprehend this." I said, "You know what? That's the way to explain this. Human mind can comprehend it, so we're not explaining it." It's maybe a little bit cheap, but it works in universe. So
Doctor Who also has the case of, oh, this is time locked. We can't fiddle with this because it's so important to the
or
history
you
of the
can't
universe.
interfere with anything you are involved. But at the moment you land there and see those people you are involved, so okay, fine, yeah.
Yep, and there's a... Oh, go ahead, Robin.
I was gonna say, before we get sidetracked on time travel,
It's an easy, slippery slope.
Yeah.
what we're talking about, we were talking about like choices and stuff.
Yep, choices
when
and
it comes to dialogue.
and whether it matters and to what degree does it matter, right? And should there even be choices?
It really depends on what we mean when we talk about choices. For me, like, if we're talking like pivotal key moments where, okay, now here you have a choice: are you gonna release the whatever bug queen or whatever, or not? Are you gonna kill her in Mass Effect? That kind of stuff. Then yeah, sure. Like, I would prefer that being more like that. It matters more if you're gonna do stuff like that. But if you're making a larger RPG with like a freeform character, I think lots of meaningless choices are incredibly important.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you're making a blank character, those choices are what determines your character. It doesn't matter that they actually lead to anything different. Like, it's nice if they do, but it's very important that you can just roleplay your character in dialogues, because the second you can't pick a choice that matches your character, then the illusion fails, right? Like, now all of a sudden you're forced into playing someone else.
Having flavor to the dialogue is very important when it comes to RPing.
Yep.
Yeah.
The tricky part about doing that, right? When you write the freeform character, you need to make dialogue that is actually relatively interchangeable. This is something a lot of companies have problems with, where it goes from being like pure, like super good, like the hero of heroes, right? And then there's the neutral of neutrals, and then there's the evilest of evils. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And this is a problem I think I saw with Mass Effect firsthand, and that's what kind of woke me up to it. And I saw it in Fallout and other games and Bethesda games as well, where you're reading the dialogue and you're reading what they're saying, and you're like, and listening, and you're like, so if I'm Paragon or if I'm good, I am like playing as the good story arc. If I touch the bottom story arc is the bad one, and then the middle one is like the neutral arc. And what's annoying about some of these things is that these games will sometimes arbitrarily lock you from making decisions because they have a morality skill point system, and if you don't spend enough morality points in good or evil, you can't choose the good or evil options, because they don't understand that your character might genuinely believe that, that particular race of aliens is just awful and they shouldn't talk to them at all.
Yeah.
Because people work that way. Sometimes you could meet somebody who's the nicest person on the block, and like he sees that we're hanging out with Fairman, he just hates Germans. Just can't stand them Germans. It's just like, nope, not touching them.
Yeah.
There is that thing called what's the word? Your character can only act based on what they know, not necessarily just good or evil. Because if let's say you have a bad guy, and okay, he's a horrible person, and you do a side quest or something, or which goes into his backstory, which could potentially, okay, I'm sparing him. Why? Because I know where he's coming from. There is actually reasoning here. So it's not just, oh yeah, you have filled up your good people bar or your bad people bar, so you can kill him or you cannot kill him. It's just that former action you can extract some effect, or what your character learned about the world and the universe. That is what I, even as much problems as that game has, the Metro games have, where it's not that, oh, this is a good ending, that's a bad ending. No, this is the, both endings are good because the, what's the word? Goal gets achieved. It's just, okay, I learned enough about the world to know that to not judge things harshly, how the world works. I see situations happen, and that allows the character to make the decision to spare the threat because, oh, we just misunderstood them. Because if you go for the bad ending, he just couldn't make that connection, which I think is an interesting way to do that. It's not a CRPG, but you can do something like that in a CRPG.
Sorry. Fairman was referring to the Dark Ones plot in the Metro series.
Yeah. Why did you say Kib?
Because I'm naturally the hair triggers. I say Kib rather than
Kib.
Fairman.
Okay. I was like, I was listening. I don't know why you're pointing me out.
No, I didn't mean to. I was trying to talk to Fairman.
My 2 cents on the few but big important choices versus like just having a whole bunch that don't really matter. I agree with you, Kibbs, on I prefer like having like these big pivotal moments. The problem with it, and why we don't see this often though, is because if you do that in a game and you have it actually affect the story, what ends up happening is you end up having to make like 2 or 3 games into one game, because if it's actually affecting the story to a significant degree, then you're gonna have to make a whole nother story for that branching path.
Yes.
And then you have these paths going different ways, and how do you bring them back to make a sequel? Because if you don't bring them back, you would have to either be...
Yep, because you invalidate somebody's option, right? So that's the sucky thing, right? Because if you play like lots of games, like any RPG or even fucking Command and Conquer, and you play a certain faction's ending or something of that nature, and you get to the ending and you're like, that was cool, I liked my ending. There's another game. Oh, I can't wait to see what happens. And I'm like, oh, my ending wasn't canon. It's like,
or you do
also...
Oh no!
Or you do the terrible thing that Bethesda like to do, where they make every ending canon.
That's awful. Some games have done that, like Invisible Wars did that, Deus Ex Invisible Wars. And I know I've only played a little bit of it, but I know how vehemently violent some Deus Ex fans get when you bring it up.
On the CNC thing, what you brought up, the problem is also that if you have one faction where you can, okay, I can believe a sequel happening afterwards.
Well, it's like,
but if there's
any
another
RPG,
faction,
right?
It depends, because some endings do not set themselves up for a good or interesting sequel. Of course, to stay with CNC, you could have a CNC which plays after the Soviets one that potentially would be interesting, but it's gonna be a lot harder to set up, and that's probably where that's going. We don't want that. We want this to be fresh, and we want them to be
it's like, think about New Vegas, right? There's 3 viable factions, or there's technically 4. There's the, Caesar's Legion, there's the NCR, then there's Mr. House, then there's the smiley one, the smiley dude.
That's you.
Who's you. You can win, right? How the fuck do you make a game where where all those endings mattered? Like, the reality is you can't unless you have a lot of money, but you need to make 4 different games. So you don't have to choose one ending. Now, when it comes to sequels and endings and stories, if you tailor certain story decisions, you can make impactful decisions, but make them relatively minor so that they're impactful and maybe affect gameplay, like the leading up to the big battle, the big climax at the dam, but maybe not affect the overarching thing. So there are certain things that you can have that are easy to write in, right? So in Mass Effect, they did it so that some characters are there and they cameo in the game, so you can see them again, right? And they can even join your party. There are ways to do it, but yes, when you get to the overarching endings, like the overarch, and you do something where it's like, this faction was wiped out, that's bad, because in terms of writing, now you're gonna have to write a whole new game. It's not like a character cameoing, right? Because you save that character. Oh, hey, look, it's that dude I saved. He's cameoing. Like, isn't that cool to see him again? Or, he's even joins the party and he's got like his own side quest. That's easy to write. It's very difficult to be like, all right, so this entire section of the planet is dead now, and like it's a dead and decayed city. Now we have to redo the entire like story arc around this zone when it was involved with characters alive there. You know, because that's just not going to work. You are going to be making whole separate chapters, and that does go back to what Rapier says, right? Where we've even talked about this in the studio, where we did like, you know, more extreme tests with narrative decisions and ideas, where it's like, okay, you do this and like something big happens, right? And it's like, okay, but now the next chapter, like, okay, but that directly relates to the next chapter, so how does that affect the story? Well, the reality is it's cataclysmic. It now means that there are two different chapters. Okay, do they merge or tie back in? And if the answer is you can't tie them back in a subsequent chapter, that's going to be difficult. How do you tie that in and make it matter? Because that's going to be difficult. Because otherwise, it's just like, it only affected like the recent thing. Like Telltale Games had that issue too, where they had this whole narrative aspect where it's like, you know, characters will remember things and they'll comment on it. And yeah, they'll pay lip service at best. And most people are relatively satisfied with the lip service factor. That's normally good enough. But even then, they started getting criticism, and people got a little sick of it because they wanted more meat to their decision, more merit.
I mean, Kips, can I bring up Mass Effect again?
I can bring up any RPG. Yeah, we're talking about.
Yeah, Morden is a good example. Very nice payoff, and then afterwards, what do you get from Morden? Yeah, an email. Would be nice if he could join you afterwards, but that would require a lot more involvement. So they made, oh, I need to lay low, or they know what happened, so I can't join you. Okay.
Well, there could
At
be.
least there was an attempt.
There could be more to it, because if we're talking about specifically Mass Effect 3, the game had barely any development time.
Yeah.
Like, it was rushed. It was a miracle it got shipped. Most of the things were cut or missing. You know, it was a disaster. Like, it launched missing like key components of the story arc that you had to buy as DLCs. Like it was a critical failure. Yeah.
When it comes to like endings and stuff like that, or like big pivotal moments, I kind of think they're kind of overstated, to be honest. Because in reality, like, when you're playing a game and you're playing like chapter 2, for the majority of the time that you're playing chapter 2, you're playing chapter 2. Like, you're not playing the end. So to me, I think that, personally at least, having more like role-playing options and paths, like ways to solve the problem, ways to get to the ending in chapter 2, is a lot more important than chapter 2 having like this like massively branching outcomes. It's still nice that, you know, depending on what you did, like things might. Most of the time, like a CRPG is going to have a pretty fixed route anyway, and I don't even like when they try doing, you know, more heavier branching, because it's exactly like Rapier said, it's gonna end up with massive bloat on like production, and it's generally just means that you're gonna get a 10-hour shorter game.
Yep.
So to me, at least, I think that the road is more important than the end, because that's also the majority of the storytelling as well.
Oh yeah, I mean, oh, go ahead.
That's where I'm a person that very important to have an ending. Even if it's a simple ending, the stock Call of Pripyat does this, where, oh yeah, all of this quest, it doesn't have a lot of quests, but the quests are relatively lengthy quest series, and all of them have their ending. And the ending is, okay, you get depending on what ending you have, like the Fallout game, you have a little picture, and then you talk, and this is the effect. And then later on, some of them go together into their own thing. I think that is important because for me personally, I do want at least some level of payoff. Should you put the overall quality of the game down for it? Probably not. But at least for me, this is important, and it can piss me off really badly to the point that I'm just regretting playing a game like with Mass Effect, because that ending was just 3 was just no.
Where the
Or
ending ruins
setting.
the rest of the journey.
Yeah, retroactively, I should play Mass Effect. Yeah, that would be fun. Then I think of the ending of 3. No, I do not want to play this anymore.
It depends on the person, right? Because
Yeah,
when I
that
think
does
about
definitely.
games, right, and I'm like, okay, Mass Effect was fun, the first game. Should 3 make 1 not valuable? And I think to myself, no. 1 is still fun. 2 is still fun for some parts of it and its story. 3 is got moments, it rips off quick, but I don't mind playing through all 3 of them, because even when I'm playing 3, I can sort of enjoy the parts I like and sort of just gloss over the parts I don't like by just complaining about it again. But this time with a different angle, because each time I play it, I learned something else I didn't like about it. So there's always something to look forward to.
When it comes to situations like that, I typically just divorce the games from each other and make like Mass Effect 1 is its own thing, Mass Effect 2 is its own thing. 3 is off in the other area.
You kind of have to with a lot of media, especially multi-piece media, right? Because the thing is like, no series is normally good all the way through. Normally. There are exceptions, like Lord of the Rings and stuff, right? But the reality is, if you look at Star Wars, right? And you look at the original trilogy, some people divorce the prequels because they hate the prequels still to this day. I don't mind the prequels, even though they're bad. But I divorce the new stuff from any of the old stuff because I refuse to just grow to dislike something I like because something new is bad. I just don't watch the new thing. It's like Stargate is a TV show I really like. I love Stargate, but Stargate Universe, the last TV show, the show that killed it, I don't care, and I just ignore it. I pretend it never happened. Star Trek, same thing. I don't think about any of the modern stuff at all. I just don't care. I time capsule it. And because in my head, I'm like, this is my canon of the setting. This era to this era, or of like shows or whatever. And I like this. And this is the thing I like. They're not going to take that thing from me. But they can keep making crap with its logo on it. But I'm never going to go watch it. Not going to waste my time.
Yeah, but that is relatively reasonable, and you are able to divorce these things from each other. This is why to bring back Star Wars, a lot of those modern Star Wars fans are the people that just... This is their identity. This is why this is also popular with
That's not just modern Star Wars fans,
yeah,
Kevin. That's every fan.
We're talking
anything.
We are also talking about RPGs here. I was just using that as a
Yes.
comparison. Don't drift too far from the topic.
I was just going...
Let's move on to the next game I want to talk about. I think it's actually better to open up Steam for this one to go to...
Why would you do this to me?
Rogue Trader, because I realized that we'd be looking at the same screen the entire time, so might as well just look at the Steam screen.
The Steam screen? Wow. Rogue Trader.
Wait, why did I open my own Steam?
See, this is a game that Squeal and I streamed. And before Squeal says his point, you know that meme of the guy eating that little chicken sandwich or whatever? He's like, my disappointment is immeasurable. This game is that to me. Now go ahead and say your piece.
So Rogue Trader is everything I hate about CRPGs compiled into one game. The writing's bad.
It's a bit harsh, but fair.
The characters are shit. The fucking combat's boring or and here's the better part, grindy. Now, why is it like that way? Well, it's made by Owlcat, and Owlcat don't make very good games.
Kingmaker's good.
I've never played Kingmaker, so
Kingmaker has a lot of
I
issues.
can't comment. This is my first.
Yeah,
this is my first Owlcat game.
It sucks, but it sucks so much that it's good.
Because people are like Owlcat games is pretty good. I'm like, oh, okay, here I go. And then I play this game and I'm like, I want to brain myself. Because the big thing that really breaks this game for me, I don't know about you, Squilly, but the fucking story, holy shit. It's so sloppy and uninteresting with a cast of annoying characters. Oh my god, like Idira. She's the most annoying of them all. And then there's the
Psyker?
That's Psyker. It's like, shut the fuck up. And like, if you read her text, it's not as bad. Honestly, if they just didn't talk, it would be better. Then there's the captain who's like, I am generic captain who's about as interesting as paint. And then there's the sister battle. It's like, I'm generic sister battle paladin character.
I love kids.
I love kids.
That's my whole personality.
Okay, and then there's fucking pretty princess, the mutant lady, who's like, I'm the writer's pet. And I'm like, shut up, don't talk to me anymore. Shut up. Oh god, I was so looking forward to this game, and it was like a kick in the balls. It wasn't very interesting.
And the worst part is that people said that they liked the first act of the game, and it only gets worse from there.
Yeah, because
so okay,
we got through the first act, and I was just kind of like disappointed. And then when people were like, "It gets worse," I'm like, "Oh no!" I'm like, "No." If it gets worse, I was kind of hoping it would get better. That was just because some games, they have a rocky start, right? And like, oh, they stumble a little, and it's like, oh, it happens, But this game couldn't just find its footing. I don't know if the writers just know how to write it. But it was just like walking through fucking concrete. Every area and every zone. And doing quests felt like a checkbox. Like in the checkboxiest of ways. Like, I got a quest for this thing. I'm gonna go do that thing. The most fun I had with this game was when chat imposed the idea that we had to save that weird private guy at all cost. That was it.
That was the one time we had fun with the game, because every other part was a slog.
It's got the combat system. Oh, the combat system. Like, there's no real synergy to this game in terms of abilities the further I got into it. Like, yeah, you can, and the thing is, you can do things that help other characters. Like, I can scan a character, and then I can, compound that scan with another scan button. And it's like, wow, now we know how incredibly weak that little fucking peasant dude is. And
but
then,
I want you to think about that turn, Kibbo.
But it's yeah, each turn I'm pressing, my character stops and, points. I'm like, look at him, weak. And then, press again, even weaker than I thought. And it's like, okay, he's even weaker than you thought.
But so, you do that every
turn. And it's every character, because it's a free action. If you don't do it, and it's the game design's just bad. The combat is just bad. There's no synergy, there's no weight, there's no elevation mechanics half the time, because you'll just shoot your friend in the back even though you're on a tower above him and he's a square beneath you, but it blows his brains out.
Is the game based on the tabletop system?
Sort of.
Yes.
I believe so.
It's sort of like a different version. I'll be real with you, as somebody who played Rogue Trader, I think Rogue Trader's kind of shit. I think Fantasy Flight Games don't know how to make good game systems, sadly. They just they're kind of dumb.
The good thing I've always heard Alcat wasn't, oh, the games are amazing. It's that they're good at making a faithful recreation of the tabletop mechanics.
Okay.
And if the tabletop system is shit, well,
I have played through Kingmaker 3 times, and I really like the game from the perspective of what we were talking about before, which is role-playing, because I think the game has a lot of sections where you can role-play in many different ways. You can role-play an evil character. My first character was a lawful good. I was role-playing a gold dragon, kind of, because you can play a dragon disciple and you can turn into a dragon. So I was kind of role-playing something like that. And the way I was playing was just kick in every door. Everyone who I think is evil, he just dies, right? And it worked, because there's literally a part of the game where, in the beginning, where you go to assault the Stag Lord. You can sneak in, and there's a shitload of things you can do in his fortress to, do things, release the bear, make people drunk or whatever. Or you can go up to the front door and you pick it literally says lawful good, kick open the door. so that's what I did. I just went in and I just fucking killed them. And that was
sounds
fun.
like fun. Yeah, that does sound like a lot of fun.
That's good. Go ahead.
But the problem is that the game is Pathfinder. It's Pathfinder 1 edition, but it's not actually a very accurate version of Pathfinder 1 edition. It's when it comes to damage values and like the core rules, things are pretty much correct, but then you have issues like sneak attacks don't work at all the way that they do in the tabletop game, and it completely shatters like the balance. Like Pathfinder is one of the worst balanced RPG systems out there. Like 3.5 is already one of the deadliest systems in existence. Like you die in like 2 turns, or the most turns in 3.5 last for like 3 turns, maybe 4 turns, and Pathfinder just increases the power level in general. And then in Kingmaker, what they do is to count as flanked for a sneak attack, all you have to do is just be in melee with somebody. So if you just walk in with one melee character into something, then every single like rogue that you have with a bow just gets like quadruple damage every single turn on all their attacks. And it just completely the game just becomes super weird.
I would point out normal Pathfinder, you can't get sneak attack with the bow.
Exactly. You can mod this though.
You can only sneak attack if you're meleeing.
Yeah.
Or you're hidden.
And I haven't played Rogue Trader. I haven't played the Rogue Trader tabletop, and I haven't played the video game, so I don't really know what it's like there. But just and this is kind of what we talked about before too, where just 1-to-1 translating a tabletop game into video game doesn't necessarily make for a good video game.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, we almost forgot to mention the menus are horrible. Like they are horrendous lists of things.
It reminds me of like playing Fallout 1 and dealing with its UI and be like, oh damn.
And
question.
Just one more thing, because I see it a lot in chat. People are talking about how jank Kingmaker is. Absolutely, it's literally one of the most broken games ever made. Every single mechanic in the entire game is broken in some way. Literally walking is bugged, and it's still bugged in the second game. Right? Like, they made Kingmaker, they released literally like 3 versions of it, and they're still broken. And then they released Wrath of the Righteous, and every single bug that was in the first game is still present.
They just don't fix their games, which is kind of a really annoying thing, because that was something when we were playing Rogue Trader chat, it was like, oh yeah, that bug has been in there since the other games. It's like, what the fuck, though?
Why did you never fix that?
Question for you, Robin, on Kingmaker. How much did you actually interact with the kingdom mechanics of it? Because that was a huge issue. Most people I saw would say that for Kingmaker, you just don't interact and just set it to automate that stuff. Because if you do, from my experience, if you don't go in knowing what's coming up, you just screw.
Nah, it's not even like that. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, it doesn't really do anything. It's just a tacked-on thing. It's just a theme. In Wrath of the Righteous, you are like a general or a commander, and you're like ordering armies around on the world map. But it's literally just like a really, really dogshit version of Heroes of Might and Magic.
Oh no.
And this is just kind of like, it's just tacked on for flavor. And like the Kingmaker part of Kingmaker would have been absolutely fantastic if it was actually a real mechanic, but it isn't. It's literally just sometimes some guy like comes and talks to you and you like click some cards. It's literally just a way to like progress the game, because the events in the game are kind of time based, so eventually after a certain amount of time passes, then the story progresses partially, right? Which I really actually like, but it's not like super well. So, but
now, it's time for Kip to say something that's gonna piss off Priximus. But fuck Expeditions Rome. I love the idea of playing as a Rome RPG. Nothing wrong, Priximus. I'm sorry. But this game, I bring it up on stream because when Rob was talking about the Kingmaker, like, minigame tacked on thing, this game, Expeditions Rome, has that, but for its, like, Legion management system. And it's just like, oh my god, like, the like, conquering territories part of the game, I hated. Like anything that had to do with my army, or like anything that had to do with like doing the battle system was just so fucking awful. I couldn't stand it. It literally is what broke me from playing the game, because the rest of the game was fine. The RPG mechanics were, they're serviceable for a budget RTS or an RPG. It's not a very high quality RPG, Expeditions Rome, but it was a quaint idea. The biggest problem though is the tacked-on mechanics. Like, this is a problem when you add like a warfare mechanic. You gotta not hold back. This is one of the biggest inspirations for me in terms of just being like, okay, if we're gonna add anything to our stuff, like, dude, we gotta do better. We gotta do better. Like, we cannot tack it on. Because that was the same way with the Rogue Trader game, the space combat. And yes, it's the basic space combat from the space version of Rogue Trader, right? But it's just awful. It's just not very fun. Like, if you're gonna add another mechanic to the game, that means, dropping everything you're doing, rolling up your sleeves and getting to work. Because that tacked-on minigame, especially if it's mandatory, goddamn bad, it better be fun. Because it wasn't fun. It was annoying in this game. It was annoying in Rogue Trader. It's been annoying in every other game where they tack on a mini game, but they don't put any thought behind it. And or the thought they do put is just too shallow. Like, Expeditions Rome didn't go far enough, in my opinion. It should have gone much farther with the warfare system. The warfare system is just an auto battler thing, and it's just the least interesting thing, right? Oh god. It's like drained the soul out of me. I was enjoying the game until I started to have to engage with it. And then as I engaged with it, I could feel my soul dripping out of me, because it's not an optional thing. It's a mandatory thing. You gotta deal with it. And if you don't deal with it well, you're not getting far in the game. And it's like, it's not hard, it's just boring. It's like, oh, I hate games like that. Like, I have two problems with RPGs that have these, like, systems. There is two extremes I hate. The first one is Mass Effect. Mass Effect 3, the big conclusion, the epic climactic battle for all the things you've done, is getting a cutscene. A cutscene where there's a lot of ships there, and they either blow up and do badly, or they do good. That's awful. I hate that. And that was just like, it didn't affect gameplay at all. It didn't affect anything at all. It just felt so unsatisfying. And here it was the same, but the inverse. It was just not a thing that I wanted to engage with ever again. I wanted to distance myself. I wanted to run. I wanted to jump out of the window. Anytime it presented itself, it was like, time for the Legion warfare mechanics. Like, God, no. 8.9 hours of it, and it was 8.9 hours too much. And I quit playing. You gotta go all in when you add like a mini game, if you're gonna have one. And if you add a mini game, it should be built on the core system of something, right? That's these games, I will say, they are lessons to be learned from in that regard. Now, I don't know how you guys feel about mini games and RPGs, but that's my synopsis. It's gotta be good.
They belong there.
Don't.
Yes.
Also, fishing mini game.
We do have a dono that came in.
Yes, a while ago.
Go ahead and read it, Squealy.
To invest in 50 Donkey Kongs. The storytelling with the best choice to make is the Life is Strange games.
Those games are terrible. Never speak to me again. And thank you for your donation. Thank you for your...
Never speak to me again, now die.
Now, Kibble, what's a great example of a RPG? New Vegas? Firstly, that wasn't the conversation we were having. Now, was it, Glow in the Dark? I think you're trying to hijack it. But New Vegas is not a great RPG, sadly. It is unfortunate that New Vegas has got a good story that is in a bad engine. That's what I would say.
Well, on a slightly different version of that topic, what are your favorite CRPGs and why?
That's a hard question, because there are many. And like... Oh, go ahead. Hold on a second, Squilly. I gotta think about that, because that's a difficult question. That's not an easy question. Because when I think about all the RPGs I played, all the CRPGs I played, and I think about them, I like them all for different reasons, right? Like, I like Fallout 1 and 2 because I love the atmosphere, and I love the music and the overall art direction. I think
Did you ever play Arcanum?
I know I never have, but I thought the gameplay was bad. I thought the gameplay was the thing holding Fallout 1 and 2 back from being a truly good game. But I thought that the story was good enough to carry it. When it came to Mass Effect, I thought Mass Effect wasn't an RPG, and honestly, it having the label is an insult. But I enjoyed the sort of setup and like the atmosphere of the world and the world building. But like the gameplay, not so much. The big thing I've struggled with when it comes to CRPGs is finding a game that truly fits what I want in an RPG's game as far as game mechanics go. I've seen some where like you can knock characters down or push them around so they have to like wait a turn, and then you can like use other characters and you do synergetic things. But not a lot of games actually build on complex synergetic systems where characters have abilities that affect things and sort of pile on things, and they can do different things and shape things differently. Like, I would like to see RPGs where you can like morph the terrain, you can take advantage of things.
There is a game that comes to mind that does that.
Tell me.
Set up and then payoff, but it's not a very good game.
Just tell me.
It's called Xenoblade Chronicles 1.
I've never heard good things about Xenoblades, but you know, that is interesting.
The problem is that you do that in every single combat encounter you get into. You set up topple and then you knock them down. You do that in every encounter, every time. That's the problem with it that I tended to find.
It's become one sort of gimmicky thing. Yeah, that's an issue, right? So you need to have like certain types of enemies, right? Like, I would imagine light enemies are susceptible to being knocked down, but medium enemies and heavy enemies may not be. So you have to use different parts of your toolkits on them, right?
Actually, the way it works in that game is that it depends a lot on what the enemy is. They have certain enemies have certain immunities. Certain enemies are basically one shot if you topple them. Any flying enemy that's laying over a cliff will die immediately if you topple them.
That was the one thing I liked about Star Wars: The Old Republic Online, was just force pushing bosses off of ledges.
That was the main thing how I killed shit in Jedi Knight.
It's like, that's a boss and he's gone.
Yeah.
So technically, Xenoblade Saga Chronicles, does do the thing you want. It's just that it's also a very bad combat system.
See, I want like more
wrapped up in the anime story.
More to it, right? Because like what Robin said about the hamstring, you can hamstring an adversary, right? Then like they're now slowed, and so now you can like maybe that opens up new options, like, or the way you treat enemies, like you can now move around them freely without them getting opportunities of attack and things of that nature. And you can more dance around the battlefield, and you can like maneuver into buildings and stuff like that. And you can close doors, and you can like interact with the environment. That's what I really want to see in an RPG, where you can interact with the world a bit more. Because like in a lot of the RPGs I played, there are buildings, there are things, like besides like the out of the ordinary explosive red barrels, you know, there's normally not too much to interact with, like the set pieces. Like, one of the big things that inspired me a lot as a kid was playing those games where they got those big set pieces in the early parts of the game. It was like, look at how cool and this game is, when it's like blowing up like office rooms and like their little, you know, things are falling apart and stuff. It's like, that's cool. But the problem is as you play those games and you get further into them, that disappears rather quickly because they didn't actually want to keep putting that in the game, and they don't normally had a tight budget. But I want a game that actually maintains consistency over its introduction, when it shows off that first, like, you know, big flashy thing, like they blow their load too early, you know, sort of mechanic, or not mechanic, but like direction is what a lot of games do, where the beginning really hooks you, like, wow, that's really cool, and then you keep playing it and like, oh, we're never gonna do that again, are we? That was just a one-time thing, right? Yeah, I guess maybe we'll do it at the end of the game if we're lucky. If they had the time and the budget.
I don't know, because it sounds like entitlement to me.
So, what about Reguline? What's your favorite CRPG?
We're about to get into that, unless you guys want to talk about Expeditions Realms more, or
Oh, I don't want to talk about it anymore.
Rogue Trader.
I've complained all my complaints away about the game. I vented.
Well,
All right.
if we, instead of going into a new topic, maybe we take regular last, and then we see what he has. If you're gonna use that to pivot into a new thing, or
the last game I wanted to talk about was Wasteland 3, which is my favorite CRPG I've played so far.
Hold on a second. We're gonna talk about anything else before we pivoted to that.
I mean,
That's what I was asking.
Could talk about my
Fairman.
favorite CRPG.
Yeah, everyone says their piece. Yeah, don't
Yeah.
forget about Chumba. Oh my god,
Or Hands that just joined.
I hate ants.
Head joint an hour ago.
No,
I
okay.
know.
Hold on, Fairman.
Yeah, I was
Go
just
ahead.
head in the ring.
What
Yeah, okay.
CRPG?
Yeah, I haven't played that many, but for me, pretty much Arcanum. I don't know if that counts as one, but
I've never played Arcanum.
with Arcanum, I have never finished
it's Fallout.
Arcanum.
It's Fallout.
Yeah, it's Fallout.
The thing with Arcanum is I love the fucking world building and some of the quest stuff. Everything about it just I enjoyed. Yes, the game had some problems because some characters, by design, in character creation, cannot finish the game.
That is one thing I noticed. That is why my furthest run ended, and then afterwards I never really came back into it. But I enjoy the whole magic versus technology aspect, and some of the writing is interesting. Because it does let you solve many things in different ways. So, you can sneak in, you can do this quest, you can brute force, which oftentimes is not gonna work because, okay, you need to talk to them, and just kill its guard. Yeah, he's not gonna talk to you. But in general, I enjoyed it. It had quite a few flaws, but just I enjoy it more for the aesthetic and the world building probably than the gameplay, but
and that's fine.
And it's a very enjoyable experience, and you can do a lot of stuff, because if you're playing as an ogre, you get significantly differently treated than if you're playing an elf, dwarf, or a human. Because everyone just looks at you and,
Yeah, and they do that thing where if you go low int, you speak like a retard as well.
That's funny when games do that. So. Water chip.
You do have a fate point system, so even if you're in a situation where, oh shit, I give myself out, I can only do this, but I do not have the skill. Okay, can you spend one of those fate points to get a guaranteed success on something? So that does not completely lock you out from pinching things, which as a game mechanic, I think is okay, and you don't get those as, oh, I played for 3 hours, I have 50 of them. No, you play 3 hours and maybe have 1. So you do need to spend those wisely. And it also was one of the games that actually had some crafting, so you could just go, you know what, I just spend my day go rummaging through the cans, trash cans, and turning these things into guns and sell them and just make a lot of money like that.
What I did in Arcanum was I would just go into someone's house, and then I would wait until it was night. Or you would specifically go into the blacksmith's house, and then you wait until it's night, and then he goes in, locks the door, and goes to bed while you're still inside. And then you just take his entire inventory, and then you wait until morning, then you go out and you sell it to him.
Or the some of the spells, because playing magic plays significantly different from going for a tech character. For example, oh, you have a quest. Oh no, the guy's dead. Wait, a necromancer. Talk to his soul. Yep, work. Quests can be solved like that. Well, okay, who murdered you? Who murdered him? Let me just talk to him. Wait, what? Yeah, this guy murdered me. Okay, thank you.
That's the quaint idea, actually. That does sound interesting.
There's also one of your characters dies. As part of his storyline, he dies, and you can only get him back if you know how to revive people. And that also is not just, oh, you revived me, thank you. No, that massively changes. He's still the same character, but a lot of his worldview, because he was dead. He was in the afterlife for a while. And that does kind of change how he interacts with the world. Which is also nice, because that is acknowledged that you can do that.
Divide the next 7 Canadian buckies. Kingmaker talk reminds me of Fable 3, where in the end game, all the gold you currently have just translate to lives you saved from the darkness. Lol.
Yeah, the gold
Thank you very
thing
much.
was... And thank you for the donation. The Fable series was an interesting thing that Peter. That's again what we talk about stagnation, and when you give too much power to the creatives, what happens is you get very indecisive games that are just like, I want them to be hand holding, but what does hand holding offer? I want hand holding. Okay, autist. Okay. I remember seeing that interview where Peter Molyneux was just spurging out about hand holding. It's like, yeah, you can hold the hands. Say, okay. What does that mean? What does
I
that
thought
do?
you were mechanical hand holding.
It's like you can hold their hands and like drag them around and show them things, and then when you do it, if you actually play the game, like it's so badly made that like your hands are like 2 inches away from each other, or like 3 feet. Sometimes if you're running.
In our
Like,
games, the entire game mechanics are built around that.
the big problem with that game is that it's overly ambitious. Overly ambitious and tries to do too many things while doing everything so shallow, right? Because you can buy properties. That's quaint, but the reality is, yeah, you can buy property, but what does it do? You get more money. Okay, what does the money do? It changes the ending. Okay, what does the ending change? How good the city looks. Okay.
Nice.
Okay.
Yeah, that is always a problem with these games that want to do everything. No Man's Sky, despite all of it, it just it does a lot of things, and it's definitely no longer the shit it was at release. So, but it still does a lot of things. But for me, it's just going, I wish you would go a little bit harder on this mechanic, because all of it's just what is this saying? As wide as an ocean, as deep as a puddle.
Yes.
So
Yep.
this is always a problem if you split. So it's better to, as far as I'm concerned, to have 5 mechanics, focus on those, than to have 50 mechanics, which work reasonably well together, don't get me wrong. They're interesting, but just ultimately it's nicer to have something that's more in-depth. To a degree, of course.
Yes, that was very
Factorial
much...
clones have that as well.
It was very much something that it's just annoying to deal with. Games are just so shallow sometimes, especially when they go too broad. See, the problem is there are games like that that are like I love the idea of like Bannerlord, right? It's an RPG as well, and so is Kenshi, and I love the idea of both games. But one of the realities is because they do so much, they only do so much shallow wise, because they can't really build upon that too much, right? Like in Kenshi, I was really hoping like you could interact with characters and you could like have relationships with these characters. And there are some characters that are scripted, but the reality is most of the NPCs are just kind of like, they're just health bars in an RTS.
They are guard number 5,
And it would be super cool if, like, in the future, maybe Kenshi 2, if the characters have a little bit more to them, so that the NPCs aren't just, like, guard number 2. Like, maybe you could bribe a guard. Maybe you could, like, not bribe him, but, like, actually get him to be a turncoat and open the gate and the siege or something. Or do stuff like that, because that would be so cool. Like, to really build up the espionage and intrigue. But they need to go in depth with it, right? Like when you're in the prison, wouldn't it be cool if you could actually like, become favored by the guards or something like that, snitch on other prisoners who are trying to escape and somehow get like reputation and stuff. But the issue is because the game tries to capture so much and it's expansive, and it is cool, but it doesn't have a lot of depth when it comes to those specific scenarios. It's actually rather shallow, and that's the part that's like, damn, like what if though? What if?
Yeah, in Bannerlord, I don't know what it's like now, but last I played it, it's like, oh, it's got like quests. Like if you want to play more of a single player like role playing experience, I'm gonna go and pick up some quests. Or what are my options? Your options are, can you bring me like 10 saws, or can you smuggle out like 200 sheep? And those are like the only 2.
Oh my
templates of the
god!
entire
I
game.
thought they
Oh.
fixed that one from the first
I
one.
thought there was one more. You gotta go find the bandit hideout. Or you have to walk around
I'm
the
not
map.
sure
to
if
find the
that's a
hideout.
quest, but it might be. It might be. Yeah.
I think it is, because the bandit hideouts are like fucking annoying to find. Jesus Christ. But yeah, they don't have any quests in that game, and like the overarching story is like, okay, there's an overarching story, and you can participate in it, but there actually isn't like that many actual storylines or quests in that game at all for each nation. It's Again, the issue is they went too wide and not enough depth. So even when it comes to ruling and becoming a king, like you don't really build up the relationship that you'd expect to have with all your subjects, you know? Like, wouldn't it be cool if your subject could have different quests for you and stuff like of that nature, and more depth there and more relationship? And you can marry and you can have children in that game, which is, again, it's doing all things I actually want the game to do. It just isn't going for the depth that I wish it would reach. It's just like it's there, it's going there, but just not quite reaching it, you know? And then don't get me started on the battles and how they always turn into just blobs.
Yep.
So they still haven't fixed that from the first one.
That's one of the sad things. The only thing that I remember being redeeming was the multiplayer captains mode, because that was kind of fun, because people would use tactics sometimes, but they wouldn't blob up. But you know what I mean?
See, that is one of those things where I think a game that does a little bit more of a split thing, where for co-op could work well, but we just these games almost always never work out properly if you have stuff like that, because just netcoding issues, the engine it's not working, or just balancing issues because if you're only in the fight, the other guy's gonna be bored out of hell while you're just sitting there doing quests. Okay, fine, but
You got a dono.
Yes, he does.
We do. A certain Bohemian donates 100 Bohemians. Don't know what I'm gonna feed him. Says, see the common complaint about Bethesda games: the breadth of an ocean with the depth of a puddle. Bethesda games. Yeah, Fallout 3 was that. See, and when I first played Fallout 3 as a child, because it was new, and this relates to our first topic about games being stuck and stagnant now. When it was my first game, I played it, and it's like you can go anywhere, you can do quests and areas. That was really cool for me, because I'd never played a game like that before. However, as time would go on, and I would discover games that existed that already could do that before, and games that did it after, I found that Fallout 3 did nothing particularly new, nor nothing particularly interesting or innovate. The only thing that it was for me is that it was the first game like that I had played. And so that discovery made me realize that the industry was rather stagnant when it came to these games. Like, you can't really change the world. You can't really, like, influence the world. The player housing thing doesn't really have any weight. There's no really, like, towns. They tried, like, things like emergent quests or whatever. But the problem with that is that it's just procedural quest generation and it has no bearing or impact. And that's just annoying.
Yeah.
Donates... go ahead.
Yeah, go on. No, go on. Go ahead.
Okay. Storm donates €5. Is this seriously just look at Steam stream? Sock fun fit kids.
It is.
Hashtag Kib and F PayPal and Streamlabs. Okay.
Well, I mean, it could be
right,
look at Steam stream, or it could be look at random PNG stream, but it's all the same, isn't it? It's a podcast, or as we call it, a bunchcast. And you're not here to look at things. You're here to hear and listen to our soothing voices and disagree with our opinions and get mad that we don't like the same things, and then we get into little petty fights.
Then you get yelled at, and then Kip's gonna kick you in the balls.
So,
and then laugh at you.
So since we got a donor in regards to Skyrim, my take on what's going on with Skyrim is kind of broader, and it's kind of what's going on with gaming in general. And Skyrim has one very good thing going for it, and that's potential. Because when you start playing Skyrim, or when you even hear about Skyrim, all you're thinking is like, oh, like there could be this, there could be that, maybe this could happen, there's so much to explore, and the potential makes it feel very vast and very interesting. But once you've played through all of Skyrim, you realize that there was like 4 quest lines in the entire game, and then just a bunch of dungeons or caves with vampires in them, and that's pretty much it. But this is kind of like, it's kind of true for games in general as well, where some people, and I think this is kind of important to remember as well, because it's very easy when you've played a lot of games that you get very caught up in, oh, this game sucks because it doesn't have advanced mechanics or whatnot. Because people who might not have played that many games still find a lot of interesting things in games that might not really be that deep. Like literally just playing Neverwinter, like Neverwinter Nights or Neverwinter Nights 2, and just looking at all the classes and they got all these prestige classes and they need these and those stats, like just making new characters over and over again and just making some new prestige class and whatnot. Like all of that is cool and fun for a while, right?
Yep.
Like I've been there. When I played Morrowind, I probably made like 200 characters in Morrowind just because I wanted to roleplay different things, right? But the truth is that Morrowind as a game is just not fun either. Like it's
decrepit.
Just like Skyrim, like it's.
I have the same thing with RimWorld, where I gotta do this one, and then right, this is just.
Oh, go ahead.
As I say, I had one experience with Morrowind, and it was making a Khajiit, stealing everything, running around naked with a candlestick and a knife, and trying to stab people because I was a child.
But yeah, when it comes to a lot of those games, especially like Bethesda style open world RPG sandbox games, is the world is more of the illusion than anything else. Because take away the world and then compress the actual real content of the game in terms of like actual quests and actual things to do, and you see an actual small, very small game. Because the reality is Bethesda mostly relies on the wanderlust to sell their game, and that's always the problem with sandbox RPGs, right? Is that it's normally a vast, cool, expansive world. Like, I see that mountain over there, I can go climb it, I can go explore it, and that's its own subgenre, right? The exploration games. But the reality is,
point out that
hold on, don't interrupt.
Skyrim,
The reality is with the exploration games is that when it comes to actual content, there is no content. And the content that does exist is either sparse or of incredibly low quality. That was something that I learned with Skyrim. Now go ahead, Haynes.
I was going to say you're forgetting that Skyrim and Bethesda in general sells their games not only on that, but literally, but you can have mods in it. So you can tailor it to whatever or add a bunch of crap that's not actually in the game.
Yeah, that was very visible in Fallout 4, where just everything is half-baked, and mods will fix it, and we're gonna get our sides wiser. At least it felt like this to me.
The problem with that, in my opinion, is like the mods should be what we call the spice to a game. It should add renewed rejuvenation and extend a game's life cycle. Mods should not be relied upon for sale or purchase. This is something that Paradox and Bethesda and many other companies are starting to do. They're going to rely on free handouts from basically the community to salvage their barely functional, mechanic missing games that they launch. Look at Star Citizen. That's just an abomination. And the best part is what made Star Citizen so unique is, unlike Fallout and unlike Elder Scrolls games, is they're not built on top of legacies that other people had made that Bethesda are milking, right? Star Citizen was...
Oh, you mean Starfield?
Or Starfield, I'm sorry. Goddamn, I get them mixed
Same
up.
game.
Starfield. Beg pardon. They're slightly different, though. Starfield itself, it represents their actual creative capacity. So when you look at Fallout 4 and Skyrim now, through the lens of Starfield, you see that creatively, they were riding on the coattails of better people who came before them, who wrote interesting settings. And those settings are what carried the games. You take away those settings, what does Skyrim or Fallout 4 have if it doesn't have the setting? And I'd say it has basically nothing. And I know you'll agree with me. No, because I'm right. They have nothing. They have nothing that builds and makes them stand up on their own 2 feet. I may not be a fan of like too old of games like Daggerfall, but I can see the merits of games like that, right? It's like, a simulated world where, and one of the early ones where it's like, if you violated laws in this country and you move over to that one, it's different, which is a really interesting concept. Because back in the old day, Bethesda's original vision was to go down the simulation path of RPGs. But it was 2 competing factions, simulated RPG versus narrative-focused zone RPG. In the end, we know who won. Insane Linguist donates 100 Checky bucks to say, when you really think about it, every single game past Morrowind is essentially Morrowind with a new coat of paint and increasingly dumbed down mechanics and general content.
I mean, it's the same engine.
Thank you very much.
That's
Big
the engine doesn't
origination,
determine
yeah.
that, Fairman.
Yeah, I know. I just wanted to point this one out because
The other thing is, it is heavily modified. It's not the same engine.
Some engines have been pushed to points where you'd be surprised how long they've been in service.
I mean, to be fair,
Also-
there's new games being
One
sold right now that
second,
run on the
Fairman.
Doom engine. So.
Robin?
I want to say I agree with Insane Linguist, except that I think that Skyrim is actually the most advanced and mechanically deep game in the series. Except, I'm not sure about Daggerfall, but that's what I will say.
Tell us why. Let's hear.
Because Skyrim actually has like really shitty talent trees and stuff like that. It's got just more advanced combat in general. Like the only thing that Morrowind really has over it is that you can create spells and stuff, but in 99% of cases, it's kind of meaningless. It's just like a fluff mechanic, and you can levitate. That's about it.
Yeah.
You'll find out.
You'll find out. Yeah, because we'll be streaming
You'll
because Chap
find out.
funded a Morrowind playthrough. Oh boy. So
I will say though, just to comment on what Robin was saying about Morrowind's magic system and the spell crafting, I wouldn't say 99% of it is kind of fluff, because you can make spells that are customizable to a person's specific playstyle. Like, there is a bit more that you can do with that, but it's if you don't know what you're doing, yeah, it's just like, well,
If
this and this, then well.
If it's like a destruction tree spell, it's like, okay, this spell does more damage, but it costs more mana. Okay, that's all you really do with destruction.
yeah, I think.
Fortunately.
So, hold on. What was Fairman trying to say earlier?
You mean Kib, because Kib was the one who was interrupted. But thanks for your consideration. But when I was gonna add to Fairman's point, it was Skyrim. Skyrim is actually, because from what I know of Morrowind, from the 5 minutes I played of it and then uninstalled it, is that Skyrim has one thing over Morrowind, in my opinion, and that's the ability to actually have some sort of mechanics, in sense of it's not just a dice roll when you click on something. But I do know that Morrowind, from all intents and purposes, a lot of people say has a much more interesting world and story. Now that I will believe, because Skyrim is fucking, like, you know, as fun and as interesting as watching paint dry. So that's about it.
One thing that actually puts Morrowind vastly over to Skyrim is that there's no lockpicking minigame.
That is
It's
true.
just a skill check.
I hate
It's
lockpicking
just-
minigames.
I will say, I do kind of prefer, just in terms of lockpicking, Morrowind's lockpicking over the little stupid mini game they have for it.
If I have to pick, I will take a skill check over like manually
it's not
picking
just
locks.
a skill check. You have to sit there and then basically use the lockpick as a weapon, and you just have it just go wiggle, wiggle, wiggle in front of the door.
Well, that is a skill check.
Oh, Oblivion's lockpicking game was pain.
I'm not saying it's not a skill check, but it's like after so much time it does the check, is what I was trying to say.
Yeah, but it's the same. So the thing is that is a much preferred system than having to actually engage in some minigame. I don't know about you guys, but I really hate... Don't interrupt. I really hate lock-picking things. Like, both in Bioshock and pretty much every other RPG, any sort of minigame puzzles. Mostly because they're not fun, and even if they are passable for a while, they get really old and really stale really quickly. That's my point.
All I was going to say, Kibbs, is I don't like if my character has X amount of like skills out of the max, that I have to be the one to do the thing. Because that's the entire point of me putting skill points into like computers or mechanics or repair, because my character should know how to do those things, rather than me having to like do a dumb mini game for it.
Now, moving past the Bethesda games, God fucking help me. They don't deserve to be even mentioned. Yeah.
What's your favorite CRPG? And why?
I haven't played a huge amount of them, and most of the ones I've tried to play, I ended up not caring for. The one I remember playing and enjoying, although I would imagine if I go back to it, I'll realize it was actually a table system, was Shadowrun Returns.
Yeah, don't go
And
back
just-
to that one.
Oh,
yeah, I like the Shadow one.
I'm
setting.
helping you now. Just keep your
I'll-
memories.
I'll tell you this: mechanically, they're not that deep.
I'd imagine so.
Because
But
Have fun memories. Don't go back.
it was
Some
my first
RPGs,
introduction
yes.
to Shadowrun, and so that helped a lot. And Shadowrun's a fun setting. But it has its issues, like most of these settings do.
Mhm.
But in regards to just like generic RPGs, according to Steam, Stolen Realms is a CRPG. I don't think it really counts, and that's a fun one. But that one also is multiplayer. So
Stolen Realm. What is this?
I don't really think it's a CRPG, but Steam says it is.
Is it because it's isometric? Is that why?
Probably.
That's fucking
Well,
dumb.
the term CRPG is super
Mhm.
broad. Like,
Yeah, no, it technically encapsulates more than you think, actually.
I know.
But
RPG encapsulates everything. So
besides Stolen Realm, Wildermyth is also a fun one, but it also has its own slew of issues. But once again, both Stolen Realm and Wildermyth are multiplayer, so you can have friends to play with and create a story as you go. Kind of. Wildermyth is more the story aspect. Stolen Realm's more just pure gameplay.
yeah, I really enjoy the concept of games that try to generate story, but it
That's
pretty
the whole
much
concept of Wildermyth.
99% of cases it kind of falls flat. But
Yeah.
But
Oh,
yeah.
God, what was the game I watched Binsky play where it was about the mercenary dudes? You know the one.
Battle Brothers
Battle Brothers. Oh my God.
or
see-
War Tales.
No, it was Battle Brothers. I remember that game because I watched Binsky play it while I was doing my job back when I had that, and I remember being like, "Oh, that sounds so cool! Like you could be a mercenary band, you could be like do different story arcs and go different places. It's all like procedural in terms of like what the world and what can be there, and that sounds really cool. And there's a lot of expansions, a lot of patches, a lot of build up, right? And then Binsky starts playing it, and I was just like looking at it, and it's like, wow, shallow video game.
yeah, it just becomes about optimizing your characters, and
Yeah.
then there's
Isn't it
just
all-
like,
The
go kill
RNG
guy. Here,
the
take
RNG
money.
The RNG fucks the shit out of that game, unfortunately.
Yeah, what I was saying is that the game that has a massive anti-player bias even outside of the RNG.
Yes.
War Tales is a neat game, though.
War Tales is ass.
Damn, they're fighting. Fuck, holy shit, dudes. Brace for
I can indeed
battle.
disagree.
War Tales is like Battle Brothers, but worse. And
I
and
looked at War
less
Tales
fun.
and I think,
I'm gonna disagree.
I think
on that.
my assumption of War Tales is like, if I'm making an RPG, I hope it's not like this. That's what I remember when I thought about War Tales.
All right,
War
then.
Tales.
All right, then.
War Tales. War Tales is closer to a traditional CRPG, because the world is just static. You always start in the same place and then you progress through it. But so it's kind of more like a linear, static world version of Battle Brothers than Battle Brothers, because Battle Brothers is meant to be a procedural thing. But I didn't really get that far in War Tales.
I
War
beat the
Tales is
first
the hardest.
arc, and it wasn't. I just didn't care to continue playing because it was just a stat grind the entire way through.
That's always an issue for me, because this is another question we need to ask ourselves, and even amongst the little chatfishes wiggling in chat. When it comes to an RPG, what drives you to play an RPG? Is it the gameplay of the combat? Is it the world and the story it's set in? Is it the dialogue and conversations that you can have with characters? Is it a mixture of the all these elements? Because for me, what drives me to an RPG is first the story is the first thing that hooks me, and then the thing that keeps me is the gameplay. So if the gameplay can be not bad, serviceable, or if we're lucky, good, and if we're even luckier, very good, which is a rarity, but you know, it happens. Then I think that's the general rule of assumption for me when it comes to RPGs and what I like. I like stories and settings that are interesting, and that's what draws me to an RPG. What draws Robin to an RPG?
I mean, it's that just interesting story and premise, really, because you know, no matter how immune you think you are to it, like the first 5 seconds of impression when you look in on a game on Steam, that's your first impression, right? And if you get a bad first impression, like for me, I really hate playing games with like low poly, simple, silly graphics. Like I only like serious games, and so that's a big factor for me. But gameplay is also a large factor, but it does come kind of secondary after that. But like I can play a pretty bad RPG as long as it's bad in a way where it's just not very deep. But when I'm playing like Kingmaker, even though Kingmaker is one of my favorite RPGs, it has such massive problems. Like you have to like buff yourself for like a minute, 5 minutes sometimes before every encounter, you know, and it's a quick load game because your characters will just get randomly one-shotted and stuff like that. Those kind of systems only become apparent much later, right? But that can completely kill a game when it does stuff like that. But otherwise, it's definitely the initial premise and just looking like it's a serious project. Really.
Yep, a game that takes itself seriously. Yeah, I can't tell you how many times I've looked at a game or an RPG and looked at like the overall direction. Because there's that one game you showed me that had like the timeline thing. What was it called? It's pixel art. It's 3D. What's it called?
It's pixel art and 3D.
Yeah, you recommended that I try it one
day. It doesn't narrow it down.
No, but he'll know.
Oh, are you talking about Star Renegades?
Star Renegades, I think. Yes, that's the one.
Yeah, it looks terrible.
Yeah, so I looked at this one, and the visual impression killed my interest before I could get any further. Like the characters, I looked at it and was like, nope, not interested, and I just fucking passed on it, like noped out.
It looks terrible, and the characters are written even worse because the only thing that they ever say is like some Reddit joke or quip. That's the entire thing. But the only reason I recommended this game to Kibbs is because this is a very, very strong take on a traditional JRPG game system, where it actually evolves the genre, and that's why I like this game. It's not a CRPG. Well, I mean, it's made over here, but RPG. That's not really. Yeah,
it more follows Japanese design philosophy, if I remember right.
You appreciated mechanics, but hated everything else about it.
Pretty much, yeah.
Because when I
also like that it's roguelike.
When I watched Bensky stream this game, it gameplay mechanics wise looks actually incredibly strong, to its credit.
Yeah.
Like, it's one of the more advanced RPGs combat-wise out there, especially with a standard JRPG combat system.
Yeah, I strongly recommend this game. Kind of.
You recommend the gameplay, but like the overall, like, because the big thing that lost me was the pixel art. The pixel art style is in some games is absolutely beautiful. Here it looks like somebody just sort of shat on everything.
Yeah, like mechanics wise it's really cool, but it looks
ugly.
Overall kind of bad. The designs are terrible. Characters are annoying as fuck. And it also fails at what it sets out to do, because it's meant to be like a roguelike that you're supposed to play over and over again. But you play it in like 3 chapters, and every chapter has the same boss every single time, and it never changes.
Oof.
So, as a roguelike, it kind of fails in that too. But I still think as a game developer that it's interesting. So I can't really recommend it for players necessarily, but for me it's very interesting.
Because I will second Robin on that. If you're looking for something to study for mechanics, Star Renegades is worth inspecting for the mechanical value alone. However, if you're looking for something of substance when it comes to story and quality, you might want to keep on walking and just watch a video and see how the combat mechanics work. Because the actual story, when I read the character's dialogue when Binsky streamed it to me, was unironically 100% true. It's just read it to your writing. See you later, Abaddon. Take care.
Have a good one.
Yeah, but
Bye.
But yeah, no, that's one of the big problems there. But yeah, it really boils down to just not being like that, not being Reddit. But there are games that do push the envelope forward sometimes, and this game tried to, but did so in a very peculiar way. Now, what was the question I asked you, Binsky? God dang it, we said
you asked me what I'm looking for in an RPG.
Yeah, you're looking for mechanics to go forward, right? That's the general synopsis.
I know it's good enough.
I don't know if we necessarily got your point though out there. That's what I'm trying to do, because we segued about talking about Star Renegades.
Yeah, no, I mean it's for me. It's not necessarily mechanics, but the overall presentation and quality of it, writing, serious project. But I do absolutely look for gameplay mechanics as well. Like that is very, very important for me.
Yeah, that's something I'm actually more interested in seeing nowadays. Because one thing I think as I've gotten older is, as a kid I was able to ignore most games mechanically. But as I've gotten older, I've started to get a little bit frustrated and exhausted with dealing with games that have just the same gameplay over and over again, loop-wise. And I'm looking for something that kind of breaks the mold, that sort of, refreshes the experience. Because the CRPG market doesn't really have anything that really breaks the mold, right? But one genre that recently got something that breaks the mold of its whole setting and kind of tips it on its head is Helldivers 2 for the extraction shooter genre. And man, I would love to see something equivalent to hit the RPG market in terms of just take the genre and expand upon it in a more interesting and impactful way, and with the same attention to detail. Oh god, that animation though, I can't. We need it back. They some RPGs, they buy animators to animate their intros, and they did that for Star Renegades, and it's not good. It's not good. It looks like, something I'd expect to see from Amazon Prime's animated, roster of cringy woke stuff. Ugh.
I mean, could be fucking CalArts.
That's.
Looks like it comes from the people that made Invincible.
I mean, that anime stuff is the fake anime that I don't like from the West. It looks very bad.
It's just trying to copy instead of understanding why it's like that.
Yep, it's pretty low quality. See you later, Moogie. Take care. Good luck with your moves. But when it comes to RPGs, what are you looking for in an RPG, Reguline?
Okay, let's transition into Wasteland 3 then.
No, wait.
No,
not yet.
Okay.
What are you looking for in an RPG? We'll get there.
Oh.
We'll get there, Reggie. Don't worry.
Because I
know you're
transition to that game because that game is what I wanted.
We will be. I'm just asking.
Hell.
This is the
All
closing.
I want Ace. Okay. Yeah, I'll go last. Fucking hell.
Oh, you want to go last? Okay. Fair enough. Because you're gonna segue with your little scooter. Fair enough. All right, Chumba, also known as Rapier Kamigawa. What do you want to see in an RPG?
I mean, I kind of agree that story is probably the main thing I'm looking for, and gameplay mechanics that at least are fun. Like, they don't have to be great, but if I can get, it's not just a complete slog to play, but primarily I'm looking for story and characters.
Mm-hmm.
I would say.
Okay.
Yeah.
Also, War Tales, it helps play it co-op.
You want to deal with the shitty parts, you know? The shit game.
Co-op does help unironically carry a game.
Yeah.
Because the thing is, if you had a friend, it does change it. Go ahead, Robin.
Yeah, because what Rapier said, where the thing is, and some people are gonna disagree with this, but in general, good graphics, good story, good like all of this shit can completely carry a game. But a game that looks like shit and all of that, but has like really good gameplay, is really niche. It's really hard for gameplay to carry the rest of the game in general.
Yes.
As opposed to the opposite.
Absolutely.
I can think of an
Absolutely
example
agree.
for a game that looks like shit. Dwarf Fortress, maybe.
I would have to say
It sucks ass!
Yeah, you don't like it, but a lot of other people like it. So.
Okay, so a game that definitely would be that for me was when I played Diablo 4. When I played Diablo 4 initially, mechanically it was more in depth than like Diablo 2 and 3 ever was, and it had a lot more involved bosses with dodging and a lot more positioning, and that was the more fun part, and like that was fun, right? But Diablo 4 had the worst story ever, had the worst overall like just everything else about it, and because its story was just kind of cringe and not interesting, I just didn't give a shit about it. I was like, nah, fuck this, like not worth it. So despite having, you know, pretty polished gameplay when it came to like dodging and some of those mechanics, at least for some of the boss fights I played, it was not enough to make the game worth playing. In fact, I have zero intention to ever revisit it unless forced to.
Just reworked it though, kid.
Because I will say this, if the story or the atmosphere of a setting isn't interesting, it doesn't matter. I'm gonna leave no matter what. And that was one of the big things for Rogue Trader that kind of broke me. It was not only chat just didn't give a shit about the story either, but like it, and it's not even their fault. Like fuck, the story was just so.
Not only were the mechanics bland, but the story was as well.
The story was bland, and it's like, what a waste of a setting, right? You take the most interesting setting about 40k, because 40k is pretty kind of average everywhere else except for Rogue Trader. Rogue Trader is like the cool part about 40k, and they just fucking dropped the ball. And it's like, man, this is just kind of lame. Like, I don't really want to play this. It's just a huge turnoff, an absolute. And when it comes to an RPG, it's a death sentence, in my opinion, for a game. If you don't have if your story's just mid, like, no, it's just not good enough. It has to be good. It has to be good. It has to be like New Vegas' story. It has to be good with compelling characters. I don't care if the gameplay is bad and that the engine's shit and that the overall like progression and mechanics are bad. The story and the characters carried it, and they're strong enough to make it shine. Man, it really breaks it for me. Now, what does Hans want to see in a CRPG?
No, in an RPG or a CRPG?
Well, an RPG in general, if that helps.
Because I was going to say, for CRPGs, I typically don't play them, usually because they have a massive time investment. But of those, Dragon Age Origin would be the one that I would point to, but it's not for the mechanics. The setting, compared to... It's not the most original, but it's interesting enough to me that it makes me want to play it, which is the same thing I would say just for generic RPGs. If the setting is not something I'm interested in, I am severely less likely to play it, even if the mechanics I hear are good.
Yep, I hear you there. Now,
Oh,
go ahead.
From what I'm getting from a lot of people is that the story is what carries the game, and the combat is something you just have to deal with.
Yeah, that's kind of how I feel about some of them. Go ahead, Vinsky.
It's like it really depends. Like the combat can make it better, but the combat, as long as it's just there, it can be like decent, and like as long as it's not outright offensively bad and it just ruins the game, then simple combat is usually
Uh-oh, I think you cut out. Simple combat is...
where
You said simple...
usually fine.
Usually fine. Okay. Because it was like, that was weird.
Probably just his mic cutting off.
Yeah. It does that. I mean, I've tried to fix mine, but now mine is overly sensitive and picks up too much stuff, which is annoying.
Yeah.
Oh well. Also, chat, if I'm loud, you should probably say something, because I'll blow my brains out if I'm peaking. I haven't actually checked. I was trying to fix my microphone last night. Okay, good, it's not. Mini heart attack. All right. Fairman, what do you want to see in an RPG?
I have literally no idea. No, I mean, if you ask me what I want to see in an RPG,
What
hard
would
for me
draw
to
you?
say.
If that helps.
What would draw me in? Honestly, an interesting universe more than anything else. I do want there to be fun mechanics, so if you could put me the choice of, if I'm completely honest, okay, you can play it as a game like Tyranny or what's called Baldur's Gate, or you can play it in the style of a Diablo to stay in the same rough genre. I'm probably gonna be for something that's a little bit more actiony. You can still have character builds there, but I care either about the story or about the world building. The Witcher is a good example. Gameplay was but I love the fucking world building, so I didn't really care that much for the gameplay.
Yeah.
So
100% hear you there.
I want a nice coherent world, nice soundtrack, and for CRPG specifically. And yeah, just some consistency. It doesn't even need to be a big story. That's always a problem. Oh, you're saving the world. No, give me a story. Okay, you're let's say something. Oh, you're trying to save your daughter or something like this. And yeah, okay, you end killing the guy. Okay, what's the threat to the country? Nobody noticed. I'm fine with that. You don't give me the big, probably a lot of Hollywood movies have. Don't give me the big sky portal that will end the world at the end. Don't need that. As long as I care for the character, that's probably the thing. Give me interesting characters.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting plot lines
and stuff to do that is not just a chore.
Oh, definitely.
Because I make me so I want to know how the story keeps going, or at least I want to see that next part because I got built up, and it's gonna be hard because I'm also, as I said, I don't even know 100% what I want from a game like that, but.
Well, yeah.
I haven't played that
female
many.
characters. Is that
What?
What about female characters?
Genuinely, no. If that fits, I have no problem with it. But I want to, if there's a character that's fit, like let's say someone like Morrigan from Dragon Age, I'm totally fine with it. It just needs to be concurrent. Doesn't rip me out of it, because there was that one game someone made me play and I said, oh, this looks nice, and then it's all of the female characters that then were just. Ugh. And I'm by far not a prude. It just don't go overboard with some things.
No, well, it's like
I agree.
It's like with anything, right? If all your characters are hot female characters or like pretty or whatever, then the world just kind of becomes sterile, right?
Everyone's pretty, no one is.
You need a bit of variety. This is what we call the spice of life, right? What makes things good or evil is having contrast. What adds stakes and value to a setting is when you see that there's some beauty in the world and something worth protecting. Just like the Shire, from Lord of the Rings.
That's the thing I want. I want the bad guys to be more nuanced. Actually give me a bad guy where I'm actually pondering, you know what? I may even want to join that guy. Stuff like that would actually draw me in, because just which would play into the choices thing. Not just, oh, I'm joining. Why? Because I'm evil. No, because I genuinely believe maybe this race should die, or maybe we should stop the use of magic because it's legitimately dangerous. Don't make it just everyone is evil and bad, and just nuance. I think that's because you said this. That just dropped there.
Mm-hmm. I've got
for me.
nothing against like the big bad, right? Being the big bad, but it would be nice. What I like is variety in the world, right? Because one thing that Rogue Trader didn't have was that, and this is something I've seen a lot of RPGs, especially a lot of modern RPGs like Rogue Trader, where everyone was either they were good and they were helping the Imperium, or they were comically evil and heretical and chaos cultists. There was no in between. It was one extreme or the other. That's why I kind of enjoyed Mass Effect 2 with the whole elusive man story, because it was, yeah, he's not a good guy, he's not on the side of you, but you're working together because the reality is that, while you may not be entirely aligned or agree, at the end of the day, you actually aren't that different when it comes to it. The differences are actually much smaller than you'd think. And then they, butchered that later on. But, nuanced characters like that are always my favorite, because a nuanced villain is always more fun than the cartoonishly evil one. The cartoonishly evil one is there to be the antagonist, to maybe drive the story forward. But the sort of skeptical one, or the one that's not entirely, you're sure of, that you're skeptical of, is more interesting, because it's like, well, while he is kind of evil, it is kind of cool, though, that he has a reason for why he's doing what he's doing, Like, he is got his own goals and his own ambitions, and they're justified in his lens in a way that I can sort of see. Versus, I want to kill everybody because if I don't kill everybody, I'll be bored. Like, okay. Okay. Which is why I find Chaos and Rogue Trader just so boring as an antagonist. Evil for the sake of evil, comically so, is not interesting.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that's the thing about having, when I said the nuance thing, having a mustache twirling villain can be fun as well. Just, it also depends what you're going for a game. Like, and I know I'm probably gonna get flagged for that. I enjoyed Handsome Jack in Borderlands 2. Yeah, there was a lot of hereditary humor, but just some of the made of it worked for me. So. And everyone was just comical, but again, that's not necessarily a serious story.
Handsome Jack was probably the best character to ever come out of the Borderlands series.
Yeah, and Fairman, I want to remind you, since you're talking about Handsome Jack, unironically, he's actually a character like Kibbs was talking about. Because do you remember the reason he was doing all the things he was doing?
Yep.
Because there was a reason. It wasn't just comic evil.
No, he was not, but he was pretty close to something, and there was a lot of holes you could poke into his logic. But yeah, no, there was definitely more to the character.
When they started to explain more, you realize that actually, yeah, he was actually much more right than wrong in a lot of ways, because the reason why he was such an asshole to everyone around him was because everyone on this planet it's a shithole.
Everyone's an asshole.
Like, everyone's a backstabbing, conniving, lying
pieces of shit.
Yeah. And he became that way because they made him that way.
Jack started out as an idealist. Lilith and, to a lesser extent, the rest of the...
Roland and them,
yeah. The rest of Sanctuary ruined it.
Lilith and Monster, I remember, right, were the ones that galvanized Jack into being what he did. Or into being what he was.
I mean, I hold against, because if I remember right, what he did to his daughter happened before any of that, so...
Because the writers don't know what the fuck they're doing. Problem.
Yeah.
Well,
Borderlands is a messy ass story.
I mean, the game was supposed to be a serious RPG set in a sort of like a Mad Maxy setting, and then it came out and it was a Reddit tier humor game in a Mad Maxy cartoonish setting. Because I remember the original trailer for Borderlands, and it looked pretty dark and bleak. And then we got, what we got. It reminds me of the Dead Island RPG, right? Which wasn't supposed to be an RPG. It was supposed to be a horror game. And it's all bright and colorful and silly. And it's like, the original promotional material for it was a very dark and like a paradise gone wrong mentality, which would have been really cool, but they didn't do it. It just happens from time to time.
Thanks. Though I think you kind of already answered this. What's your favorite RPG? He's missing.
He's dead. We need a thing where he turns into a blue screen, you know, like when you ask him something.
While we're waiting for him, we'll read the 2 donations. Insane Linguist donates 50 chunky bucks. For story, few games have Planescape Torment beat. If you want a TTRPG rule set recreated in autistic detail in a CRPG, Temple of Elemental Evil. And it's
I actually never played Temple yet. Oh yeah, that was another one.
No, continue.
No, that's all I had to say. I have actually never played Temple of Elemental Evil.
I've never even heard of this game.
Neither have I.
It's an Obsidian game, I think.
Obsidian?
I'm pretty sure. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's. What's his face?
It's not a modern Obsidian game, right?
No.
Thank God. Because I won't touch their modern shit.
Halgren donates 20 sekiros. So what you're saying is you want toaster repair. Aha. That's actually a thing I want to talk about with that 3. But
what repair?
Toaster repair.
Listen, Hands, are you back yet, Hands? Hands, come in. Hands, if you're...
I had to step
He's
away
off hunting for... He's off hunting for mini tacos.
Mini tacos? He typed that? The little fat sow?
He's back.
I am eating, but it wasn't mini tacos. I thought Fairman was going to ramble longer, so I was trying to sneak off.
Wow, what a
wow.
Wow.
He pulled a me.
He was trying to buy time. Yeah, and you know
you're
what?
way
It
too
never
old
works.
to be that bitchy.
Yeah, it didn't...
Fairman, you don't even know how old I am.
He's 37,000
I know how old
years
you
old.
are.
He's like, eep. Now, Hands, you have a question.
Do I?
Yeah.
You did pretty much answer this already, but what's your favorite RPG?
Just in general, like not restriction to
Sure.
like CRPG.
No restriction. RPG genre as a whole.
Favorite RPG. Without having to think about it too long, and you're probably gonna fucking sigh at this, Gibbs, because you never finished the damn game.
Oh, don't get mad at me. Come on, let's hear it.
I will.
I know what it is.
System Shock 2.
Yeah.
It's not a CRPG, but it is an RPG at least.
It is an RPG.
The thing is, remember what I mentioned earlier, is that I have to really buy into the setting to like be able to like really enjoy it. Like, does it have the best mechanics? No, it's on a modified version of the Dark Engine, so it's kind of clunky. But the setting and the characters, the few that there are, I really enjoy.
Yeah, it's a very good, dark, kind of twisted science fiction setting.
You can't say it's good. You haven't beat the game yet.
I played it for more than 0.9 hours. Steam is lying.
Wow.
Steam is lying.
Kept playing, stumbling through it, and dying your way.
I don't know why Steam only thinks I have 0.9 hours, but I swear to God, chat, I have played this game for hours at least. For at least 4 hours.
I don't know. Pretty sure Steam wouldn't lie.
Like other honorable mentions I can at least think of off the top of my head, or Dragon Age Origins, KOTOR 1 and 2.
You know what?
That's kind of it.
One game I thought was kind of a fun RPG that sort of slipped my brain, that I think is actually my favorite, like, RPG story-wise, that I just only remember when Hans was talking about that one, is actually Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines. I really like the story in that one, and I like the different characters and starts and how the different characters and starts change the entire story and dialogue, like how it's interactions. I just think it's the worst game I think I've ever played because it's so fucking janky.
I think Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines, and then the other one that was made around the same time, I don't remember its name. They had a lot of
twin stick
ideas. What?
You mean the action one?
It was another vampire, like the Masquerade. I don't remember if it was Masquerade.
Redemption?
Yeah, no, it was Redemption. I'm pretty sure it's Redemption.
The one with the Crusaders, I think.
Yeah.
I've never played that one.
That one is. I know of it.
It's interesting. So the basic premise is you start as a Crusader knight in the crusading era. He gets vampirified, and he's like, "Oh no, then over the course of the game, he gets put in torpor, and then he wakes up in what was it, the 80s, 70s?
Looks like it.
From the
And so
hairstyle, yeah.
basically, it's a similar, a kind of a person out of time type story. As you can see there, yeah, you can unironically get a minigun and a rocket launcher.
Rocket launcher.
The new RPG they're making is going to be such a shit show.
But yeah, I wouldn't say these games are good, but they have a lot of interesting ideas in them.
They've got a lot of charm with the story and the writing. It's just a shame that the games are very... I don't know. Have you played them, Binsky?
Vampire the Masquerade? Yeah.
Mhm.
I played the first one and the second one.
I like the stories. Like, I thought the characters were very compelling. I just thought that the gameplay was just so bad. Oh my god.
It looks like torture to play.
It is torture.
The first one you can barely even walk. Like, the game is so clunky to play. It's...
Yeah.
I played it online a little bit, actually.
Wait, it's online?
Yeah, they used to have like RP servers for it.
Oh, I don't know that.
Yeah, they were terrible.
They were terrible.
I would say, like Vampire the Masquerade, it's similar to me to like a lot of other games. Like the universe I can find very interesting. The actual gameplay though is oof.
Yes.
It is old. Very old.
Now, I guess we can finally allow silly Squealy to talk about his next
What about
subject.
me?
Oh, did we not do you? Fuck. Oh, god damn. I just keep missing. Oh,
What about my favorite games?
Oh my god, Binsky. I thought we did,
Your favorite
everyone.
was his favorite was
Wait.
Kingmaker.
Okay, before we do Binsky, is there anyone else that I've just completely spaced out on doing?
Did you ask chat what their favorite video game was?
I did.
We already, yes.
But I'm gonna actually ask them again because I forgot half of them. So we're gonna like read them out because we'll engage with them because I guess they deserve a little bit of attention. Thanks, Kim. Quite horrifying. But thank you for banning that bot in Rumble. That name gives me cancer. And
Can I read it,
no,
please?
I tried to burn
All
it
they
from my
posted
memory.
was a link.
Chatfish, donate $20 so I can read it. I can read the name of the bot. That was
Oh,
in Rumble.
Okay.
Ironically, it was
Not you.
they just posted a fucking link, and I looked at them, and I looked at the name, and it's like, I know what I need to do.
All right, Elbinsky, enlighten us with the Binsky's choice of RPG games.
Well, I'm a little bit like Kibbs, where it's really hard to pick one because there are things that you like about them and things that you don't like about a lot of games. Kingmaker is definitely up there, but it is extremely poisoned by being Pathfinder. Like, I can't play it anymore because the system just ruins the game for me. Even with mods, like it becomes kind of playable if I download like a buff mod that just instantly puts all the buffs on you. But the 3.5 D&D system, like I just don't agree with it at all. It's just stat stacking and it doesn't make for interesting character creation or anything like that. But I really like the overall game still. It's probably I don't know if I want to say the biggest, but it is definitely one of the biggest RPGs out there. The way things work, it makes the game feel really massive. Like the world feels big, and there's a lot of role playing you can do. Unfortunately, the characters are extremely cringe. Some less than others. Like some of the characters you can actually manage to deal with, but some of them are completely intolerable. But otherwise, I really like Baldur's Gate. But I really hate Baldur's Gate 1. And Baldur's Gate 3 isn't a real game, so that doesn't count in. But like you still need to kind of play Baldur's Gate 1 to really appreciate Baldur's Gate 2, because it doesn't really do that much, but still, if you cut it out, you're still missing some stuff that makes 2 a lot more enjoyable. But I really think 1 is like a 2 out of 10 game. while 2 is like a 7 out of 10 game for me, and that's a really high score coming from me, by the way. But again, there it's D&D again, and that and in this case it's real time with pause as well, and that means that you just end up like auto attacking enemies forever, and the gameplay is just not very interesting. It's actually very complicated until you understand what you need to do, because like mages, they pop up like 9 million buffs on them, and if you don't know how to get rid of those buffs, you just can't kill them.
You just sit there sad.
So you just need to know how the game plays when it comes to spells. But I still think like the D&D version that they use there, like 2.0 and earlier, is much better than 3.5. So I still like it more when it comes to the systems than I do like any 3.5 base game, really. But like the overall experience is really, really strong in Baldur's Gate, especially Baldur's Gate 2, where the world feels really immersive. Like the graphics are fantastic, even for the age, and the characters are great. The romances are actually pretty good too. Like, I think it has the best romances out of any RPG I've played, but the game is kind of railroads when it comes to choices and stuff, like hard choices. Like it's kind of just like a main story that's pretty set, which I'm fine with personally. But and lastly, I do want to mention, because Planescape Torment came up, and Planescape Torment is not my favorite RPG. It's probably one of my least favorite RPGs.
More of a reading game from what I hear.
But I do like Torment Tides of Numenera, which is, according to the advertisement that they tried and the branding, the spiritual successor, which isn't true. They just slapped Torment on to sell more, which is a terrible idea, because a lot of the sales or a lot of the reviews on Torment Tides of Numenera are negative because they try to pass it off as Planescape Torment. But it's less of a CRPG and more of a what is it called? A visual novel. It's just presented as a CRPG. There is still combat, but the combat is pretty simplistic in general, and often there are like other solutions. Like you can go and manipulate something that will, like suck the enemies into another dimension, or something that'll explode, or something like that. And if you play, like, you can play it kind of combat heavy, or you can choose to not do that. And if you do that, then there can be like less than 10 encounters in the entire game, and the rest is just reading and dialogue. And I really like this game a lot. I like the story. I don't like the characters that much. The characters are kind of weak. I really like the main antagonist. I like the protagonist. I really like the Numenera world. I like the Numenera system for video games, because a lot of the time when you try to do something in this game, you can fail. But it's not just like you failed. Sometimes you just fail, absolutely. But sometimes failing leads to another path. Like something else happens. Almost. Yeah, exactly. Like you fail and you find another item.
Like an actual RPG.
Yeah, and it's one of the only few games that do this. But the game is still kind of weak overall. But it has a special place in my heart still because of that. I still think it's one of the stronger CRPGs out there, personally. But if I had to pick one, I would probably go with Baldur's Gate still. Baldur's Gate 2.
Yeah, specifically.
Baldur's Gate. Yeah,
he loves Baldur's Gate 2. What's wrong? You don't like Baldur's Gate 3, where you spend 2/3 of the game not in Baldur's Gate, and the last third you get there?
I still remember when I tried to play Baldur's Gate 1, I picked a fighter. Because I thought, okay, like, you get the cleave feat, right? So you kill something, you can try to hit something else. I was very sad. That was very, very sad.
I tried to play Baldur's Gate Bensky, but I tried to play with like 6 people on the multiplayer thing, and that went badly.
Don't do that.
Multiplayer Baldur's Gate Bensky.
Don't even.
Don't even.
No.
The problem is Baldur's Gate's a quick
Don't even do
saving
it with
game.
2 people.
I know, it's a quick save game. It's so fucking brutal to kib.
And especially the first one, because it's early D&D, and early D&D is not balanced. Like, it doesn't make any sense. Because when you're like level 3, if you're playing a wizard and you don't have like a good enough con score, you can still have like 9 health. And then in like the first dungeon, there's kobolds with short bows, and they shoot flaming arrows that do like 1d4 plus like 4 or something, and then they just one-shot you randomly. And you don't have any revive spells or anything, so you just have to quick load or walk all the way back to town to revive.
Yep.
Game.
Or you talk to like a character and he's like, can you help me with this thing? Sure. Okay, thanks. Teleports you to another area where there's super high level monsters. It's like, oh, can I go back? No. I really hope you have a safe close by.
If not, too bad.
Now, I think it's finally time for the stream. No, I'm kidding. Squealy.
Hi, chat.
Squealy just gets continually denied.
While you type it in, I'm going to read Sven's donation. Sven donates 20 sequitos. Personal favorite failure, running from the hotel.
Favorite failure? I don't even know what that is.
I don't
I'm
know
assuming
what he's talking about at all.
it's referring to Vampire the Masquerade, but I don't know.
Could it be? Is that what you're referring to,
yeah,
son? And thank you for your
hotel
generous
club.
little donation. Now, Chatfish, before we fully move on, feel free to tell us what your favorite RPGs are and why. And we will read them, because I'm kind of curious to know why you're wrong and why I'm right. Ted's like, I hate Kip. He always does this. I do. It's my job.
Hank Kolsar says Neverwinter Nights 1 and 2.
Wow. Ban him.
Okay.
Garbawar says Palanscape for story.
Planescape.
Planescape.
Yes, he does. Let's see what they're saying.
My brother saw that he had Wasteland 3 on the screen. Says, "I love fighting Ronald Reagan."
Galaxy Stranger says Age of Decadence. See,
You show respect to the president.
chat, I have looked at Age of Decadence. I have been tempted by it a few times, but I never end up touching it. Mostly because it looks a little janky, but it's like it story-wise sounds interesting. It's like a decadent Roman Empire that
I
collapsed.
want to say it has Romans. It can't be terrible.
But it's like it's fracturing and collapsing, and so it's the end time, sort of gritty and dark.
Yano says Might and Magic 6. Sven says Disco Elysium. Kami game. John M says Dragon Quest Monsters. Terry's Wonderland.
That sounds like something that came out for like the Atari or something.
Grimywald says Gothic. Gothic 2 is even better. And Rife mentions Wizardry.
Wizardry. I thought that was a strategy game. I didn't know it was an RPG.
Yeah, I forgot about that one. When it comes to writing, Disco Elysium is probably my favorite.
It is. I know because I remember you streaming it like a bajillion times.
I played it twice.
It is made by a very big update now. It's made by unironic communists, but
me saying Kami game is actually funny because it's not. It's not really.
Okay,
so
hold on.
Here's what's actually the case. You want me to speak it, or you want to say what you're saying?
Well, no, let Binsky, because Binsky knows this game more than anyone.
No, let Reguline. Reguline.
Okay.
So, this game had a very, very odd development because it was made by, headed by a Kami and his Kami friends who didn't actually really work on the game whatsoever.
Nice.
But the actual people coding and writing and making the game were not communists and thought their boss was full of shit. So they put a lot of anti-communist stuff throughout the entirety of the game.
Yeah, when it comes to like political bias, the game is actually very balanced and well written when it comes to that kind of stuff. Like that is really not at all a problem with the game.
Now, so it's just a rumor.
No, it's because of the head developer.
It's the head developer did it, but then they didn't actually work on it, and the people that actually worked on it made a better game.
They got canned, and because they got canned, they made a big stink about it, and that's why, like, they framed it like we were the stars behind the game, and we got fired, and that blew up across the entire internet, and that's why, like, these pieces of shit say that they made the game, and now they're, so everybody just thought
the commie dudes got canned, shit canned.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
The main one is in an insane asylum.
Right, well, let me just add that to my wish list now. My opinion.
That does change my thoughts.
That changes everything I think about the game.
Insane asylums
yeah.
I think game might be based now.
Wasn't there a thing where the quote-unquote best ending was like siding with the commies or something like that?
No.
Don't spoil the best ending.
Don't spoil. Because I might actually play this.
No, I mean the failure scene from Disco Elysium. Okay, that's what you're referring to.
Unironically, now I kind of want it. Fuck. Hate you, Binsky. It's $40 fucking dollars.
It's actually really strong. But the problem with the game is the systems in general. Like, there are too many RNG sections.
I would call the game a visual novel.
I mean, there's no real combat, so it is a visual novel. It's just presented like a CRPG, which is fine. But there's so many percentage chance things, and it's just super annoying because it's just like it's just a failure. Like it's not written like you fail forward. It's just like, no, you fail, right?
Okay.
You are now a racist. You have to be a racist. What? I don't want to be racist, though. You are racist.
You are racist.
Yeah, there's 25 peelings. Gigaline reads 6 and S7 and kisses Brazilian on the forehead. What? Sock fun fit Oblivion. Oh yeah, I read that unfortunately incorrectly. Yeah, you're right. It was a V and two eyes. Sven Hallgren enjoys 50 seculos. Disco Elysium basically shits on every political ideology and simultaneously tries to steelman them. It's hilarious.
You know what that means? That means that it is written well. Because you're not supposed to... Like, you're supposed to write a character like he believes in his ideology. You're not supposed to write him like a moron and just make him look stupid because you don't like his ideology.
Straw manning, yep.
Yeah, it makes it come off as hollow, where it's like you give like the like basic level like refutation of ideology, and it's like, I never thought of that. It's like, really?
and to some degree, you can absolutely say that they might be straw manning. Like, this character is a straw man, but they some are a little bit like that, but they do it for everyone too. Like, there are smart people and there are stupid people in this setting as well. Like, just because someone believes something doesn't mean that they have to be intelligent and like get what they believe across right, or believe it for logical reasons, or it's writing.
That does sound compelling. I remember listening to you play the game, but I was always under the impression that it was like pro-commune or something at some point. I don't know where that slipped in. It must have been when that debacle happened, and I only heard a snippet of it.
It's probably also because it's part of, like, I guess you could call it an urban myth where everyone just believes it because everyone hears it and then just propagates itself from there.
Yep.
Wow. It's because sometimes I put too much stock in what some certain people say about certain things. I'm not gonna name names.
No.
That's my bad.
For example, there are funny things you can do in the game, like, without spoiling much, but your character is a massive alcoholic, and there is a guy in the game who is a racist, and he believes in race theory and that kind of stuff, and if you talk to him, you can become his apprentice, his race apprentice. And then you can learn about racism, and because you learn about racism, you can then internalize it, and you can then use this racist ideology to better yourself and quit being an alcoholic and get over your alcoholism.
Oh my god, that's incredible.
Oh, so fucking funny.
You can use racism to cure
Sounds
yourself.
absolutely fucking retarded, but I just assume that is the entire game is not meant to be taken too serious. Eh?
But again, it's like, she's like, I'm a racist. What? I don't want to be a racist.
I'm a racist, and this is why you can't be an alcoholic.
If you lose the checks with him, like every check available with him, you have to become a racist to get past him.
You have to become a racist to get past. Become his racist apprentice. That's fucking special. Teach me the ways.
Look upon the city. What do you see? People slaps him. Wrong.
Wrong.
What are the racists? What skin color do they hold?
That's funny as fuck. Alright. I guess it's time for Squealy's turn.
Yay!
Alright.
I didn't know we would have this section of the podcast, so I added
remember, so
Wasteland 3 into that
when it
discussion
comes to like these formats, Squealy and everyone, these podcasts are meant to be literally like friendly podcasts, the kind you'd expect in a friend group, not a professional one, because that's not the Bickering bunches. I know, I'm talking to chat. It's not a professional one because I don't like the suit and like neat and prime, and it's just cringe. It's unnatural. I like the more calmed and relaxed ones. That's what makes us unique, because everyone else is fake. Jan donated 25 Polish bucks to say, racism, consumable items, cures alcoholism, increases karma with Beano, and Strata. Hashtag Psycho, hashtag Fit, hashtag Oblivion. Thank you for your donation. Now, Squealy.
First, I want to talk about Wasteland 2.
Wait, let's get this.
Too bad you got another dono.
Do Sven's donation.
Chat, donos coming quick, like little small ones, like $2 ones. We can fuck him over for like a good 10 minutes. Sven Algren donates 20 euros the same. You can get past Jean-Luc by talking to his boss. Says Sven.
Yeah.
Cheating! You're cheating! You're giving me tips
But
in advance.
to talk to his boss, often you have to talk to him first.
Oh no.
Rapier donates $1. Fuck you, Rapier.
Didn't say anything.
Rapier, would you like to say something on stream while I procrastinate to let other chatfish potentially donate? It's an unfortunate. Yeah.
Regulon, you can choose the text that, except actually no, you can't. I changed my mind.
I changed my mind. Last second.
Stockfun, Bernina, and Baldur's Gate 2.
Wow.
Okay.
Baldur's Gate 2 fund. Sometimes you should just skip the bad ones. I'm just saying.
Bald Man Gate Duos.
Nobody donated 22 to read that stupid name, Squealer. Damn it, chat. I'm trying to stall. I can't stall any longer, chat. You gotta chat.
So Wasteland 2, it has a lot of fucking problems. It's basically a Fallout game.
Okay, now I gotta go Wasteland 2. Hold on, Squealy. Well, come on. Cut me some fucking slack here.
Okay.
Make up your goddamn
Wasteland
mind.
2 has so many problems with it. That's why I suggested Wasteland 3 instead of 2 for my favorite. Wasteland 2, it has an awful UI. The gameplay itself is kind of ass, and the balance is off the fucking wall. There's only 2 good weapons in the game, and the rest of them are fucking ass. That's why I don't like Wasteland 2. The story's good, though.
That was just.
I mean, I didn't play it, so I can't refute you at all. So, yeah.
The problem is that
the
problem is that the main enemy of the game are robots, and the further you get into the game, the more armor they get. And armor, if you're not using a assault rifle or a sniper rifle, which has armor penetration, makes every weapon dog shit. Which is the problem. The besides that, like, the story's actually pretty cool.
I mean, Fallout has that issue too, right? Like playing small arms in Fallout 2. Like, what are you doing?
It's
pick
torture.
Weapons like the normal people.
Yeah,
actual torture.
Person.
Oh my god, you know what's funny is the Wasteland devs are the same people as the Fallout devs.
Yeah.
Well, that explains why their game design is similar.
That always bothered me.
That's why Wasteland 3 is better.
Harlot donates £2 to say, shut up, Reggie. Thank you for the donation. Slapback donates $5 to say, I have a lot of favorite RPGs to set off Coconut, though. I will pick Elden Ring. Hashtag Oblivion. Hashtag Fake Kips. Hashtag Sock Fund. Thank you for your donation.
Thank you.
Keep
Thank
them
you very
coming.
much.
Gotta...
Also, the developers of Wasteland 3 are the same developers who made Torment Tides of Numenera.
Yeah.
Oh.
Wait, did you not play it, Binsky?
I haven't gotten to it yet.
So, Wasteland 3 is a serious game under the guise of a silly game because of how much wacky shit happens in it.
Yes.
It's a wacky universe.
It's a very, very serious story because of all the horrible shit that can happen.
Yeah,
but it has a lot of humor.
Yes.
Dark
what I
humor.
would say is it is a silly universe, but everyone in the universe takes it very seriously. That's
also, but the main reason why I say it's my favorite one is because the combat isn't torture to play.
It's just incredibly broken.
That's a bonus.
Yes, you can actually you can be very, very powerful, especially with certain kinds of builds.
Shotguns.
But you're not tortured when you play with any other kind of gun. It doesn't feel like I want to rip my fucking hair out because I'm using a pistol, you know? That's why I like this game over Wasteland 2, specifically. Because that's the way it is with Wasteland 2.
It does have better gameplay. It also feels like Fallout, doesn't it?
Yes, it also has meaningful choices, as in, when you come across like the third son of the patriarch, you can just fucking blow his brains out, because he's a fucking asshole. Fucking kill him. And like that completes the quest. Even though your objective was to bring him back. Fuck this guy. Just kill him.
the patriarch would understand.
I actually like the patriarch in the game.
Yes, he's actually just a fucking solid leader, unironically. Even though, like, despite all like weird fucked up shit he has to do for his country. Well, his country, his city-state, really. Sven Halgren does 20 sekiros for is the save breaking bugs still around? I don't think so. I never had any save breaks.
I don't remember either. We played through it 75-hour stream series, and I don't remember there being any save breaking bugs in our playthrough.
Like, they have perks like toaster repair, which it's more of a joke. Like, it is just a joke. But like, all toaster repair does is let you open up toasters, which give you certain items, and those items can be used as just good items. For all intents and purposes, it's like excavation. It's just a perk that lets you get specific items that are hidden away. That's all it does. Third thing, I enjoyed myself playing the game. I can't say that about a lot of CRPGs.
Yeah.
Because most of the time, when I play a CRPG, I'm like, wow, this story's great. The combat's fucking horrible. Like, this game does nothing new, nothing special about the actual mechanics, but it's not torture to play, and that's why I like it so much.
Also, the boss battle music
is fucking phenomenal.
It's
like, the actual
fucking
soundtrack's great.
It's just American songs, but like they re-sang it, and it's all like sort of dark and twisted.
It's also has co-op too, which Wasteland 2 does not have.
The battle hymn of the Republic, or the battle hymn of the Republic is in there.
Yep.
I remember that boss battle song, and it was so good. It hits so right, and the game is sadistically dark despite its humor. And it very much captures, if you miss Fallout 1 and 2 style of storytelling, and you wish you could see it again, Wasteland 3 offers that. And it was a fun game to play through. I remember collecting Snickers and thinking, like, I can't believe there were Snickers in the game. And that was literally like a thing I needed to get, were Snickers.
I love Snickers, man. They're great.
You're gonna like Wasteland 3 then.
you can still make broken builds. That's still a thing that's on board. But it's not torture to play any other way.
Okay,
it's
so
not
one spoiler.
Torturous to play any other way.
So Bubbles played the shotgun dude, right? He made every boss trivial because he found out how to break and exploit things, like he always does. I don't know if the shotgun build is still broken, but he literally, the giant robo-scorpion that's patrolling in the wasteland, and if you get ambushed by it, you have to fight it, and it's a huge scorpion, ancient war machine. He fucking, like, one-shots the thing with a shotgun. Oh, you can really break this game. I will say that much. But it is a fun... It is janky, though. It is kind of on the janky side. It clearly didn't get all the funding it truly needed to truly get off the ground. But it is honestly what I wanted Baldur's Gate 3 to be like, in terms of, like, quality. I thought that this was just a better game all around. And I thought when people were praising Baldur's Gate 3 as, like, the best RPG ever, I felt like it was a knife in the back. Because, like, this game came out, like, in 2020, 4 years ago. And it deserved that recognition, but it never got it.
Problem is, people praise Baldur's Gate 3 because they're horny.
The other thing is
even though the characters are ugly as sin.
Wasteland 3
Also,
doesn't
it's
have
recency
the
bias.
well, Wasteland 3 doesn't have the budget. It doesn't have the polish. It also isn't of an IP on the scale of Baldur's Gate. Wasteland follows an old IP, which was the original creators of Fallout, because Fallout guys made Wasteland. Then they lost the rights. Then they got Fallout. Then they lost
got it
that.
back again.
So, I'm already explaining it. You don't need to interrupt, goddammit. And then they got Wasteland 3 again. And that's how it sort of well ended. You should give Battle Realms a try. That's random. That's an RTS, not an RPG, actually. I don't think so. Well, Brian Fargo, the founder and ex Wasteland 2 and 3, also founded Interplay. Interplay. They imploded. Due to all sorts of controversies and dramas. That's not a good sign. That's not good.
I think there was a lot of drama between him and Tim. What's his name?
Schaefer?
Tim, the guy who, one of the guys who worked on Fallout as well.
Mm-hmm.
Tim, what's his name?
Tim Kaine.
Tim Kaine, yep. Because Tim Kaine is important.
I seem to remember watching one of his videos, and he was talking about something like he like his bonus got cut or something, and it was like really weird things going on, and eventually he just left the company. I don't know if Brian Fargo was the one in charge at that point or what, but there was definitely a split there at some point.
Yeah, Interplay had all sorts of drama. And for those who don't know, who are little lemon fish and baby fish, little guppies, Interplay was the big cheese on the block in the late 90s and early 2000s. And then they imploded. They were the big publisher. They were the EA. They were pumping out really big titles. And then they just sort of poofed due to
Interplay
internal
was
things.
Interplay was ran to the ground by Kayan Brothers. They bought Interplay from Fargo.
Okay, you looking it up?
No, I'm reading what Rife the Mad says.
Oh, learning. Educated shit. Interplay was ran to the ground by Kayan Brothers. They bought Interplay from Fargo. Yeah, because all I know is Interplay took a nosedive in terms of the games on their roster. And they had some really strong titles, too. Really artistic and very creative in general, which is rather fascinating. Interplay also helped father, Fallout. And only because Fallout wasn't originally funded, but they saw its success and were like, all right, dump some goddamn money in that game. Dump some...
Also, the last thing I want to talk about, Wasteland 3, I don't feel like I'm Mary Sue when I play the game. It's great. Because you play as you play as the Arizona Rangers. You're not the Arizona Ranger. You are the group. So I don't feel like I'm the most important person in the world. I feel like I'm the new mercenaries in town that everyone is trying to get a hold of to do work for, to have them work for.
Yeah, I would definitely say you feel like in this one, story-wise, you feel sort of like a side character in the Wasteland series.
Well, you two have convinced me to give it another shot. Now that I know that there's Snickers in it.
Now that I know there's Snickers in it.
Did you not want to play it beforehand, Reaper?
I briefly tried and ended up not liking it for some reason.
If it's not to your taste, it's not to your taste.
I think
they are CRPGs.
I think it was mostly character creation. I was like, I don't know what any of these stats apply to, and I just made a complete dog shit character. And I was like, I didn't feel like redoing this.
My favorite part of the story was the people that skin people and put them on kites.
Oh, those fuckers.
Yeah, skin people alive and they're like flying on they skin kites, where there are people like screaming like, ah! But like it's so fucked up.
It's horrible.
Like there are some fucking awful things in this fucking universe. Beefio shows up and typos at us. He says, I have, in which he corrects, hate the hero trope in games. I'd rather be a no-name part of the world. If you are looking for that, Wasteland 3 does kind of offer that. Because you're not the end-all be-all. You're like what Squealy said. You're the new merc on the block. And everyone's desperately in need of some extra firepower.
Kenji does that as well, but that's an entirely different thing.
Oh yeah, technically in Oblivion, you are also a side character, because according to CalCal, this is true, Sean Bean is the main character of Oblivion.
He dies.
That's true. Well, he's Sean Bean. Can't blame him for that.
CalCal donates $1 as well on Streamlabs. But Kiv, Reggie, listen, I am the fucking Enclave.
Mm-hmm. He's mad. He's coping, and he's seething. Fumigating, even.
Starfield guys, this is Galaxy Stand.
John Starfield.
John Starfield.
Well, with that out of the way, I think, does anyone have any closing notes on today's RPG topic stream?
Can't remember.
Don't drink battery acid.
Probably a good idea.
Baldur's Gate 3 sucks ass. It's not a good game. That's what Netflix.
Oh, okay. It's definitely...
It is a vastly overrated game from everything I've seen about it.
I hate it. It's one of the worst RPGs I've ever played in my entire life.
I have no idea why it did so well. It honestly didn't feel like it deserved
I know why it did so well. I just don't think it's good.
I mean, the gaming media blessed it with all its fucking might, and the normies gobbled it up. I guess that's why.
It was save horny along with wackiness and dumb crap like that. That's why people liked it.
It's just a walking simulator, man. I can't do it.
What?
Save horny.
Have you never heard the term, Fairman?
I think I did hear that.
Sven,
I thought that was someone taking the piss.
No, Fairman, that's a serious term.
Oh boy.
And Sven, the DLCs for Wasteland 3 aren't very good, unfortunately. They're just more combat scenarios.
Oh yeah, so one thing to be quickly, if you're going to use the stream as a recommendation, the DLCs, I mean, if you can buy them on dirt cheap, sure, but to be brutally honest, the DLCs in question, they are... That one was okay, but that's just extras.
They're overpriced for what they are.
They're just more combat encounters, and if you like the combat encounter, then sure, but they don't really add a whole lot of meat to the actual story. The base game is more than adequate. Either way, little chatfishies. I think we'll wrap up today's little stream. But before we do, this is the chatfish section. Does any chatfish have any comments on today's stream that they'd like to voice and come in here and talk about? You have like a couple minutes to pop in the kib size bucket, and we'll let you say your piece on what you think of today's subject and how you feel. Tell me your little fifis, your sensitive little fins. Demand.
Who do you want to yell at?
Yeah. Preferably not me.
Why is it Reguline?
Yeah, why is it Reguline?
It's always me. I'm not sure why.
It's fun to yell at Reguline. So now's your chance. Nobody? Come on, chat. You know you wanna. Don't look at me like that, Terrasat. He's like, I really hate Reguline. I know you do. Can't stand that fucking Discord kitten.
I can give my closing thoughts on all RPGs as the current systems that we're dealing with them and whatnot. We probably won't see any real innovation in CRPGs or anything for a good while still.
There's not gonna be. There's no reason to.
Until we see like, well, an indie project to come in to try to change something.
Mm-hmm.
But
People are so easily content with garbage that they'll just eat anything up.
and people have kind of, well, accept. Yeah, the combat or gameplay won't be good, but we're here for the story.
Yep.
Any other closing notes, any of you? Any chatfish want to add anything? Let's take a look.
I don't see anyone waiting.
They're a little shy today. Well, chatfish, if that's how you're gonna be, a shy little chatfish, then so be it. It's okay.
Shy.
It's not like I'm hurt or anything. It's not like I'm gonna fucking cry. There's like a billion of you. I get it. I understand now. It's because you agree with us so much, and that you basically are such little yes fish that you've decided that we're all right. Even Squealy.
Could always...
The first one I see in chat is Aaron and I'm saying, "No, I am scared. Thank you."
It's okay to be camera shy, goddammit, but one day you're gonna get the balls. They're gonna drop. Plump.
We could always just abduct someone and just force them to get
abduct people from random stream rooms. That won't make them
Yes.
upset. Why am I here? I'm trying to play a game with my friends. Yeah, well, guess what? I'm making
We're your
content.
friends now.
We're your friends now.
You know what? I see someone we should definitely bring on stream. Oh.
No, leave them be.
Oh, he just left.
It was Paolo.
Oh.
He was listening to you. Now, chatfishies. Let's see what the poll also dictated, because I'm curious to see this as well. I am not entirely surprised at all about the fact that art and visual design has very little impact. But I think it has a greater impact than you'd think, chat. I should have also asked another poll on, do you judge books by their covers? Because I guarantee you art and visual design would have a little bit more impact had we phrased it that way.
The reason why they're going with story over everything else, Kibbo, is because they remember the story from old games who don't have the best art or visual design.
But what makes you buy an RPG, Squealy?
I will say there needs to be a minimum of visual, like... you can only go so low before people just go, I'm sorry, that just looks too old.
Yeah, like Underrail. Like, every time I get, like, I'm like, oh, I maybe should try that. And I look at it and I'm like, nah.
I'm going to tell you right now, it's not your game.
Busy, no. No. I know, I've actually tried it. I tried it for a little bit and was like, this is, like, everything I dislike about RPGs. Super grindy. Alright, chatfish, we're going to play Edgy the Hedgy. Yeah, that's right, you heard it. Edgy the Hedgy is coming up next to you, chatfish. A Chow Chow requested stream. It's awful. I don't want to play it, but we're going to play it, and God help me. I hope it doesn't make me cringe.
You should not be forced to play that.
So I'll be setting up the stream. It'll take me like 10 minutes. It'll take me like 10 minutes, chat.
It's actually kind of fun.
Oh, is it fun? Well, you know what? It's going to be a great game, chat. You're all going to love it. I'm going to enjoy myself. And you're going to be like, wow, Kib, I can't believe you're playing Edgy the Hedgy, and you're an Edgy the Hedgy fan now. I've said Edgy the Hedgy too many times, and then what I feel like is a paragraph of my life. So now I'm just going to, wrap up here. Thank you for your generous donation, chatfish. We'll see you in 5 or so minutes. So see you in the Weird Sonic game stream. Goodbye.
Goodbye now.